Chapter 645. The old man laughed and stroked his beard. Pointing to the people in a mountain village, he slowly said, "Those are our outer sect disciples. But because the sect has few resources, in addition to cultivation, outer sect disciples also need to learn how to make a living to help the sect progress. So that's how it is." Gu understood and said lightly, "Thank you for your advice." In the next moment, he disappeared from his original place. When he reappeared, he was already hundreds of miles away. He said lightly, "So that's how it is." They walked to the outside of the main hall. The old man said, "I'm an outer sect elder of the Gene City sect. I don't have any right to enter. Please forgive me, young master." Gu cupped her hands and said, "Elder is too polite." Several disciples walked up. After asking about it, Gu was brought into the main hall. Inside the main hall, a few elders were quarreling about something. Everyone's faces were red from arguing. One of the elders said, "This magnificent holy school closed its mountain gate 3 months ago and even issued a challenge to us, requesting the disciples of our 2 sects to have an exchange. Now, the great elder and the 5 most outstanding disciples of our sect have disappeared. Tell me, how can we agree to it? Do you mean that the sect this old man belongs to can kill our grand elder? There's so many disgusting things in this sect. Who knows what will happen?" They looked at each other. When they saw Gu coming in, the people who were about to fight immediately put on a sage-like appearance. One of them smiled and said, "You're a friend of the Grand Elder, right?" Gu cupped her hands and said, "Yes, I am." They looked at each other, and one of them walked to Gu and asked, "When did you see Elder Gene?" "I saw him about 3 months ago." The old man patted the table and said, "See, I'm right. Junior brother, you are too impulsive. Moreover, although this young master has seen the Great Elder, the Great Elder's protective jade tablet is still intact. This means that he is still alive." "That's right." The crowd continued to quarrel. Gu knew that they didn't care about the life and death of the Grand Elder. Otherwise, they would have already sent people to look for him. According to Gu's view, they were worried about how to face the challenge from the Sheng sect 1 month later. Furthermore, neither side could send out disciples who had cultivated for less than 20 years. Gu calmly said, "No matter what, I am acquainted with the Great Elder. If there's anything I can help with, you can tell me." Hearing Gu's words, everyone looked at each other. One of them stepped forward and asked Gu, "Little friend, is what you said true?" Gu smiled, and a burst of profound energy appeared in her hand. She deliberately suppressed her profound energy, which was only around the 8th level of the spirit profound realm. The elders looked at each other. This strength was enough to represent them in battle. However, they didn't know which sect Gu was from. If it was those trashy, profound cultivators, then forget it. One of them slowly said, "Who is your master?" "This one is just a wanderer in the Jianghu. I learned it all by myself." "What?" They instantly stood up. Learn it all by himself? In the entire continent, there weren't many geniuses who could say such words. They looked at each other and instantly felt a sense of appreciation. If they knew that their great elder was crippled by Gu, they would definitely be shocked. Several of their most outstanding disciples had died under Gu's sword. No one knew how they would react. One of the elders nodded in satisfaction. He took a step forward and said to Gu, "Thank you, young master." Gu thought, this is just child's play. "Young friend, you have such achievements at such a young age. Wouldn't it be better if you could join our sect?" Gu calmly said, "This one is long like the life of a lone wolf. I have no interest in joining any sect." "That's a pity, but I still have to thank you for your help." They looked at each other and clapped their hands heavily. One person walked forward and said to Gu calmly, "Ji Gongzi, I will take you to another place first. Because this time, we're using a team competition system, I would like to take you to familiarize yourself with our inner sect disciples." The Golden City sect had yet to produce a true disciple. Now, they could only bring out their inner sect disciples in front of everyone because all of their true disciples had died at the hands of Gu. A few people looked at each other and walked in front of Gu, bringing her out. They came to the side hall. About a dozen disciples came out and whispered to each other about who this person was. The outer sect elder was asked to tell the inner sect disciples that you would be representing the Golden City sect. He stood on the square and said to the people in front of the hall, "Quiet. Everyone be quiet. I want to introduce everyone. This time, Yu and Gongzi will be representing us in the Five Profound Alliance." "What? How can it be him? Who is he? We have never seen him before." A teenager came out and said, "This one is Zhu Dan. Greetings to young Master Yu. This is going to be a good show. Zhu Dan is also our inner sect's fifth disciple." Yu cupped her hands and said, "This one is Yu." Zhu Dan coldly snorted and said, "Our eldest senior brother went out and did not return." Presumably, the masters were confused for a while, so they invited someone like Gongzi. Yes, this is an expert who has cultivated for less than 20 years and has already stepped into the spirit profound realm. And we did not feel the existence of profound chi on you. Get lost quickly. Yes, get lost. Get lost. Everyone shouted loudly. There were even two people who wanted to pick up rotten eggs and throw them over. Yu said indifferently, "Then you are not convinced." Zhu Dan said indifferently, "I, Zhu Dan, am the first to not be convinced." The show is about to start. The outer sect's fifth disciple will fight against an unknown brat. What Zhu Dan was most proud of was his speed. He waved at Yu and said, "Gongzi, don't say that I am not polite. How about I let you have 3 moves first?" "You let me have 3 moves?" Chapter 646. Zhu Dan seemed to have heard the funniest joke in the world. His figure flashed, and in the blink of an eye, he was in front of Yu. Mysterious sword, 3 consecutive sword thrusts. After roaring these words, the precious weapon in his hand instantly turned into 3 sword cheese. The first sword cheese and the second sword cheese overlapped. After the 3 sword cheese overlapped, there was a loud rumble, and suddenly a white light lit up in front of them. The white light completely lit up the night sky. However, Ji did not move at all. She suddenly released the Qi Gang from her body. Accompanied by a loud rumble, the long sword hit the Qi Gang. It was accompanied by a loud rumble. Suddenly, the sound of the explosion gradually subsided. The first move, after her voice fell, the resentment in Zhu Dan's heart grew even stronger. How could this brat's skill be so strong? Could it be that he was a defensive expert? He thought to himself. In an instant, he disappeared. In the blink of an eye, Zhu Dan was in front of Yu. With the precious weapon in his hand, he rushed toward Yu. Yu disappeared from the spot in the blink of an eye. The second move, Zhu Dan's face became more and more twisted. He gritted his teeth and said, "Kid, how dare you look down on me like this? I will make you suffer a fate worse than death." After shouting these words angrily, his figure flashed, and he was in front of Yu. Yu took a step back, and the precious weapon in her hand fell in the blink of an eye. He let out a miserable shriek as the surrounding stone worms were sent flying backward. After the insects screamed, they turned around and let out a mournful wail. A group of flames wrapped around the stone insects. Yu said indifferently, "The 3 moves are over. It's my turn now." After saying this, Yu flew forward in the blink of an eye. She held the precious weapon in her hand and slashed forward. The opponent raised his hand and blocked Yu's precious weapon. At this moment, the 2 treasures collided with each other. Yu's Warhound's greatsword. Even Yu did not know what grade the precious weapon was. Anyway, it would increase according to Yu's strength. This was completely against the rules of cultivation. Yu's figure flashed and came in front of him. She directly grabbed his neck and lifted him up. When that person was lifted up by the neck by Yu, they saw that the person was lifted up by the neck. He said faintly, "Have you admitted defeat?" After Yu said this, the people around him looked at each other, not knowing what to say. The people below the stage looked at each other, and they all took a step forward. They cupped their hands and said, "Greetings, senior brother." Yu let go, and Zhu Dan, who was hanging in Yu's hand, fell to the ground. Zhu Dan slowly stood up. They said, "What should we do?" After hearing his words, he suddenly felt a chill in his heart. Ji said indifferently, "When the time comes, just follow behind me." After hearing Ji words, the people around him looked at each other, then slowly walked forward and knelt on the ground. As a profound practitioner, strength was always the most important thing. After saying this, half of them disappeared in the blink of an eye. In the next moment, when he reappeared, he said indifferently, "There's only 1 month left. What should we do now?" After hearing this, Ji said indifferently, "Just train hard." He took out the storage ring that he had taken from Elder Driedbone. There was a small scroll in the storage ring, and there were hundreds of 8th-level spirit profound realm Xian beasts sealed in the scroll. Ji threw several elixir bottles into their hands. After receiving the bottle of pills, they swallowed all the pills. After swallowing all the pills, they slowly opened their mouths and said, "We feel like something is constantly shaking in our Dantian." Ji guided their Xian energy out of their Dantian and into various parts of their bodies. After experiencing the fluctuations of Xian energy in their bodies, at this moment, the medicinal effects of the elixir quickly transformed their Xian energy. In the blink of an eye, he stood up and said slowly, "I feel like I've directly advanced by a level." The remaining few people looked at each other at this moment. After feeling the fluctuations of Xian energy in their bodies, they disappeared in the blink of an eye. In the next moment, they appeared in front of Ji. There was joy on their faces. Ji said indifferently, "Once you enter the scroll, your Xian energy will be stabilized." After Ji said this, the surrounding few people disappeared in an instant. They had entered the scroll. However, they never expected that in the blink of an eye. Everyone united in an instant and charged in the direction of the Xian beasts. Ji sensed that their Xian energy was stabilizing. She said indifferently, "Kill, kill, kill." After Ji said these words, the surrounding people charged forward. They pulled out their swords and heavily slashed at Ji's direction. Ji's figure flashed and disappeared in the same place. The Xian beasts in the scroll actually broke free from the scroll and came to the Gold City sect. They saw the Xian beasts roaring at Ji, but the Gold City sect disciples were still in the scroll. Ji must first protect the scroll, then he could protect the disciples who were still fighting with the Xian beasts. She slowly said, "Since you all ran out of the scroll, then I'll let you all practice for me." After saying that, Zhang Wuji nodded. Ji's warhound's greatsword swung out. In an instant, a fierce wind blew. Ding! The host used Wind Ardent Blade. Obtained 1 by 999 experience points. The strong wind continued to blow, directly flying up. It looked like it was going to hit that person's body. Those Xian beasts ferociously jumped in front of Ji. When Ji's sword fell down, the treasure instantly lit up. Countless light swords floated in the air. They flew out in an instant. Chapter 647. After the light swords fell, the warhound's giant sword and the fierce wind blades slashed down in an instant. They raised their hands at the same time, and in an instant, a chi shield appeared in their hands. Those giant swords hit the chi shield one after another. The chi shield seemed to have a pair of eyes and swallowed all the fierce wind blades in front of it. Ji's eyes suddenly lit up. How could such a thing happen? At this moment, those Xian beasts raised their heads. Their blood-red eyes immediately released a demonic red light. They let out a loud roar. Countless balls of fire spat out fireballs in an instant. Ji held the treasure weapon and disappeared in the blink of an eye. When he appeared in the next moment, he was already in front of those level 8 Xian beasts. The warhound's giant sword released countless balls of fire in an instant. Ding! The host used raging flames to burn the city and gain experience points 1 by 999. As soon as the system's voice sounded, the weapon in Ji's hand suddenly lit up brightly. All that could be seen was the fireballs flying towards the Xian beasts. Boom, boom, boom. After 3 loud sounds, those Xian beasts flew out. In the blink of an eye, Ji disappeared in the next moment. When he appeared in the next moment, he raised his hand. He directly used the warhound's giant sword to cut off their heads. The heads fell to the ground. Ji looked in the direction of the picture scroll. The picture in the picture scroll was still changing, but the aura of the Gold City sect disciples on the picture scroll had changed greatly. Now, they had stabilized their own realms. Ji suddenly disappeared on the spot. He said faintly, "You can come back now." After he said this, the picture scroll in the air was suddenly released. In the next moment, dozens of people appeared in front of the picture scroll. They all sucked in a breath of cold air and said, "Greetings, Brother Ji." After saying this, they all knelt on the ground and kept kowtowing. They only saw Ji disappear in an instant, and in the next moment, he appeared in the sky. Ji said lightly, "You've been gone for a month." After Ji said this, they all took a step back and looked at each other. Ji said lightly, I didn't expect that you've stabilized your Xian energy. Now I just need to wait for the time to come." Suddenly, a ray of light lit up in the sky. In the blink of an eye, Ji disappeared on the spot and reappeared in the next moment, then flew into the main hall. A few elders were surprised. Their disciples had been missing for an entire month, but there were still so many Xian beasts. When they saw this, their hearts couldn't help but tremble slightly. But they didn't expect Ji to defeat so many Xian beasts in a day. After seeing so many people, they felt a little ashamed in their hearts. Ji waved his hand. At that moment, a few people in the surroundings came forward. Ji said calmly, "Next, we'll just have to wait for the fat pig to deliver himself to us." After he said this, the sky suddenly shook. Countless people in the surroundings slowly took a step forward and released 2 artifacts from their storage rings. They looked at each other. Ji said lightly, "I'll leave this to the 2 of you." After Ji said this, they all stepped forward and picked up the treasures in front of them. After putting away the treasures, they instantly disappeared from their original spots. Ji said lightly, "How do you feel with these 2 treasures?" As Ji's voice fell, the elders looked at each other. Although they didn't want to admit it, the rest of the people looked at each other. At this moment, the rest of the people came in one after another. They cupped their hands and bowed. They bowed slightly and said lightly, "There's thunder outside." After they said this, the people around them went into a hubbub. They slowly opened their mouths and said, "Elders, the people of magnificent mystery sect have arrived." After hearing Ji's words, they all came forward. At this moment, a dense crowd appeared in the sky. There seemed to be a trace of disdain in their eyes. In their hearts, it was just a small sect from the Gold City. After they said this, they took a step forward. Ji said lightly, "Today, our 5 sects have gathered together to test the disciples of the other sections." After saying this, Ji disappeared in the sky. After a while, several lightning bolts appeared in the sky. Ji said indifferently, "Who's here?" At this moment, countless people walked out. They held long blades in their hands and laughed as they walked in. They clasped their hands at the people in front of them and said, "My name is Li Yu. I am the great elder of the mysterious sword sect. Today, I have brought my subordinates to greet you all." After he said this, a few people from the Gold City sect came out and led them into the reception hall. Ji said indifferently, "Is there anyone else?" A few elders gathered behind Ji and looked at Ji and said, "There are still 3 sects coming." As soon as he finished speaking, the 3 groups of people slowly walked through the gate. They were looking at the people from the Gold City sect with arrogance. After they were invited to stay, Ji went back to the stone room. There was still 1 day before the 5 profound gathering. Ji felt that the sky splitter was about to break through. He sat cross-legged on the ground. He closed his eyes and started to operate the sky splitter. Ding! Host used the sky splitter. Obtained 1 by 999 experience points. As the experience points continued to enter his body, Ji's Xian energy continued to expand. At this moment, Ji raised his hand. 5 rays of mystic light appeared in the void. They represented the 5 types of Xian energy: metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. Ji said indifferently, "Enter." As soon as Ji finished speaking, the 5 rays of light suddenly flew into his body one after another. Chapter 648. Ding! Wind Inheritance gained experience points. 1 by 999. Ding! Congratulations to the host for breaking through to the second level of the human profound realm. Ding! Fire inheritance gained experience points, won by 999. Ding! Congratulations to the host for breaking through to the second level of the human profound realm. Several voices rang out continuously. Ding! Congratulations to the host for breaking through to the next level. The power of the 5 inheritances in his body actually broke through to the next level in an instant. Seeing the scene unfold before his eyes, Ji said indifferently, "Rise." When the 5 profound energies returned to Ji's body, he stood up. At that moment, the profound energies in his body were suddenly released. At that moment, the ground in front of him started to crack open. Just by moving his hands, he already had such power. How could anyone not be afraid of him? Ji said indifferently, "I finally broke through to the next level." He let out a long sigh. After leaving the stone room, the surrounding people walked towards Ji and looked at each other. Ji said indifferently, "I didn't expect that such an accident would happen." He sensed the profound energy in his hand and smiled faintly. At this moment, another ray of light appeared in the sky. Ji felt that this profound energies was actually the powerful, profound energies of the human profound realm. His feet started to move instantly. Ding! Host used the dark forest and gained experience points, won by 999. Ji flew to the front of the profound fallen immortal sect. He saw a young girl in white robes in the profound fallen immortal sect's lodging. She was waving a silver sword in her hand under the moonlight. It was as if there was a celestial melody that kept ringing out. She followed the melody in the sky and kept jumping up and down before landing on the ground again. Ji only felt that the other party was extremely beautiful, but he couldn't think of anything else. He took a step forward and suddenly heard a clap of thunder in the sky. The young girl in front of him was holding a precious weapon. In the blink of an eye, she flew in front of Ji. She turned around and stabbed the long sword in her hand and arrived in front of Ji. Ji asked in confusion, "Why are you stabbing me?" He merely raised his hand and used 2 fingers to clamp down on the incoming sword. As Ji bent his hand slightly, the precious weapon instantly broke apart. The precious weapon broke into 2 halves. The young girl looked at her precious weapon in shock. "How can you? This is my best prized artifact." As soon as he finished speaking, Ji waved his hand and the treasured weapon froze in place. After seeing her own treasure, her eyes revealed a surprised smile. She curiously asked, "You're so powerful. What's your name?" After hearing this, Ji said indifferently, "What about you, Ji?" "They all call me Fairy Rulin." Ji smiled faintly. "Then I'll call you Little Rulin from now on. What do you think? Only those close to me can call me Rulin. If you become my master, I'll agree." After hearing this, Ji smiled faintly. "All right, I'll agree." Everyone looked at each other. Ji said faintly, "As your master, I'll teach you a set of sword techniques." After saying this, he followed the others and displayed the sword techniques. When he saw that this little girl didn't seem to understand, he had no choice but to hold her little hand. That said, Ji had no idea that Fairy Rulin was the most beautiful celestial maiden in the entire ancient mystic lineage. Countless people wanted to grovel under her skirt. However, such a hand that countless cultivators dreamed of touching was actually in Ji's hands. After practicing a set of sword techniques, they looked at each other. He slowly took a step forward. Ji said faintly, "I'll be leaving first." There was a trace of admiration in Fairy Rulin's eyes. Ji disappeared on the spot in an instant. In the next moment, the people around her suddenly walked out slowly and unsheathed their long swords. Who dares to trespass on Fairy Rulin's mountain range? When they saw Ji, they were ecstatic. Ji had raised the level of their inner sect disciples a few days ago. The remaining few people stepped forward one after another. Ji said faintly, "Why? Do you still want to catch me?" The few people looked at each other. How could they dare to catch Ji? On the contrary, they smelled a trace of a woman's fragrance on Ji. Could it be that Gu and Fairy Rulin had been in close contact earlier? They immediately felt extremely envious. They took a step back. Gu said faintly, "Relay my orders." After hearing Gu's words, the rest of the people exchanged glances and said calmly, "That's not it. We'll retreat now." Gu returned to the stone chamber and closed her eyes. Early the next morning, countless drum beats were heard. Boom, boom, boom. After 3 drum beats, all the disciples opened their eyes. They put on their clothes and walked out of the door. They came to the central square of the Gold City sect. 6 stone pillars were inserted into the center of the plaza, near the stage. The 6 stone pillars gradually merged with the profound energy, as if they were a huge cover, enveloping the entire stage. Gu saw this scene and said faintly, "I didn't expect that the 5 profound gathering would be so grand." After he finished speaking, several claps of thunder suddenly sounded in the sky. Countless people slowly walked up to the arena. The Gold City sect master had not appeared for a long time, but today he ended his seclusion for the selection of the 5 sections. When he landed on the ground with his profound beast, everyone cast a pleasantly surprised look in his direction. The old man's aura was incomparably majestic. The hearts of the sect leaders of the few great sects trembled slightly. They could faintly sense it in their hearts. This long sword actually had such a terrifying power. He slowly said, "He has already reached the peak of the 5th layer of the human profound realm." The remaining few people looked at each other. A hint of shock appeared at the corners of their mouths. The remaining sect masters of the 4 sects furrowed their eyebrows tightly. Chapter 649. The remaining people walked out one after another and cupped their hands. I didn't expect that the Gold City sect leader would have such a big breakthrough. Congratulations. The few of them smiled and cupped their hands to each other. The Gold City sect leader looked very happy. He laughed loudly and said, "You're too polite, you're too polite." He said faintly, "Today is the 5 sects meeting. How about we start now?" Of course, the 5 profound meeting wasn't just a battle outside the mountain gate. It was just that once they entered the training palace, the one who could get the most points would be the leader of the 5 alliances. Gu led everyone to the mountain gate. They saw a huge golden light emitting from the training palace. The remaining disciples of the other sects all rushed to be the first to enter, fearing that they would be left behind. Gu saw this scene, just as the Gold City sect was about to enter the training palace. Gu suddenly smiled and pulled them back. She said faintly, "Wait." After saying this, they entered the training palace. After all of them had entered, Gu led the Gold City sect disciples into the training palace. After everyone had disappeared, the door to the trial palace slowly closed. Jin Chung said faintly, "Your disciples have all entered." Everyone, I suddenly remembered that there seems to be a sealed yellow rank Xian beast in the training palace. What? After a Xian beast broke through to the 10th level, it was divided into heaven, earth, Xian, and yellow ranks. When they advanced again, it was equivalent to breaking through to the life and death realm. Moreover, they could take human form. After thinking about this, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. The Gold City sect leader said faintly, "This is something that I just thought of." However, they didn't expect that they would look at each other and say faintly, "Not good. Then what should we do with our disciples?" Jin Chung frowned. "If that's the case, there's only one way. Let's hear it." After saying this, the Gold City sect leader took a step forward and said faintly, "Now, there's only one way." After saying this, he gathered a powerful dark force in his hand. Suddenly, at this moment, the dark force in his body gathered together. He turned around and said faintly, "Let's gather all of our dark force together. Only then can we seal them." After shouting those words, the crowd beside him gradually took a step forward. "All right, our fallen immortal profound sect will definitely lend you a hand." The remaining few profound sects also walked out one after another. They sat on the ground and gathered all their profound chi together and poured it into the trial palace. The leader of a Jincheng sect also raised his hand. He poured his profound energy into the training palace. At this time, a ray of white light appeared in the palace. Jiyu's mind moved, and 2 life treasures appeared in his hands. With a flash, he disappeared from where he stood. At this moment, the huge rocks in the surroundings suddenly moved. The people from the 5 great sects all took out their life treasures. Although these rocks were huge, they were nothing in the eyes of the profound cultivators. However, these rocks seemed to be endless as they continuously flew out from everywhere. Jiyu could see that there was an array here. With this thought in mind, Jiyu took a step forward and said faintly, "Heaven and earth order, turn." After Jiyu shouted this sentence, a bright light appeared in the sky. The command flags in the sky kept dancing in the air. At this moment, those command flags gradually came to Jiyu's hand. Jiyu stretched out his hand and waved it forward. Instantly, those command flags came to Jiyu. At this moment, the profound stones above fell to the ground. Jiyu heaved a sigh of relief. In an instant, Jiyu's body flashed, and he disappeared from where he stood. He slowly took a step forward. Many people appeared around him. They were all puppets. Jiyu said faintly, "The second stage has appeared." At this moment, countless puppets slowly walked towards Jiyu. After seeing this scene, Jiyu said slowly, "These are puppets. You all should be careful." When they heard this, they all retreated and arrived in front of Jiyu. Jiyu said faintly, 18 golden puppets." At this moment, the 18 golden puppets in front of him suddenly appeared. They raised their heads and said faintly, "Come out." After saying this, many puppets appeared in the sky. At this moment, those puppets charged towards Jiyu. Jiyu suddenly stretched out his hand and waved it forward. In an instant, the 18 golden puppets rushed forward. The only way to break through the puppets was to break through the threads of profound chi that controlled them. As soon as he said that, countless threads were pulled out and danced around the surrounding puppets. Jiyu's body disappeared in an instant when he saw this. He saw that there seemed to be a small stone pillar among the puppets. After seeing that stone pillar, Jiyu punched it heavily. There was a loud boom. At this moment, the stone pillar suddenly became extremely bright. At this moment, a huge puppet stood up. It actually used the power of 3 layers of puppets. In an instant, the 3 layers of puppets gradually merged together. The giant roared at the sky. At this time, the puppets in the air quickly merged together and ran in the direction of the giant. In an instant, those puppets merged with the giant's body. The giant roared and slapped down in Jiyu's direction. Jiyu's chi aura suddenly surged and pierced through the chi aura. With a loud boom, he said faintly, "Kill." In an instant, a huge treasure appeared in his hand. He held the warhound's great sword and jumped up heavily, running towards the huge puppet. Although the giant in front of him had become incomparably strong after merging with so many puppets, its movements had become slower. Chapter 650. Although the giant's movements were slow, it was still easy for him to grab Jiyu. Jiyu's 3,000 clouds movement had already reached its peak. But every time she appeared, it was exactly where the giant's palm was about to land. How could there be so many coincidences in this world? His gaze was locked onto Jiyu's body. After Jiyu disappeared, he once again felt Jiyu's path and heavily landed his palm. Jiyu only now understood that the other party didn't have any remarkable abilities. But through the changes in profound energy, he had completely figured out where her palm was going. Jiyu's figure flashed and disappeared from her original spot. Ding! The host used 3,000 clouds movement. Obtained 1 by 999 experience points. Since you can figure out where I'm going, then I won't hide anymore. Thinking of this, Jiyu heavily swung the warhound's great sword in her hand forward. The disciples of the various sects who were surrounded by the puppets were already scared out of their wits when they saw the giant puppet Mo Yin. How could they still have any thoughts of dodging? They only saw Jiyu suddenly disappear from her original spot. When she reappeared, she was already in front of the giant. An expert was indeed an expert. Ji's sword fell. In an instant, a profound light appeared in the sky. What a shocking, profound energy. Where did such a terrifying, profound energy come from? A look of disbelief appeared on everyone's faces. Jiu indifferently thought in her heart. Right now, the battle between the two had already turned into a life and death struggle. Her mortal, profound realm strength could no longer be hidden. Everyone outside the trial palace was even more shocked. The other 4 sect masters all sucked in a breath of cold air. I never thought that Gene City's sect would have such an outstanding disciple. That's right. Sect Master Gene City makes me feel ashamed. Gene City laughed out loud, but in his mind, how could he not remember which sect's disciple this youth belonged to? But this wasn't important, as long as it didn't affect his plan. There was a loud rumbling sound. Although the puppet statue was powerful, it was still extremely weak in front of someone at the early 2nd level of the human profound realm. After receiving Ji's sword strike, its body turned into stone and slowly fell to the ground. What a powerful ability. They all sucked in a breath of cold air. Ji's figure flashed. Under the situation where no one was aware, she used her own profound energy to entangle the hundreds of puppets present. Her divine sense entered their bodies in an instant. In the blink of an eye, those puppets had turned into supreme treasures. Ji waved his hand, and all the puppets entered his pocket. As the giant puppet turned into ashes, the air suddenly shook and countless rocks fell. Ji frowned as she looked at the falling rocks. With a flash, he appeared several hundred meters away. He raised his hand, only to see that the artifact was already in his hand. An immortal path appeared in front of everyone. All the disciples seemed to have forgotten the tragic situation just now. On the path of cultivation, if one was only afraid of death, then they would never become a peerless expert. Without the slightest hesitation, they all charged into the immortal path. They all rushed into the immortal path with long spears in hand. All of a sudden, the world became dark and gloomy. The entire immortal path seemed to be on the verge of collapse. Everyone anxiously shouted, "Run!" No one knew who was the first to shout this sentence. At this moment, the people in front of them could be said to be 8 immortals crossing the sea, each showing their remarkable abilities. However, there were some who wanted to use their artifact to bypass the immortal path, but they didn't expect to be beaten back into the immortal path. It was as if there were 2 barriers that could completely lock them in. If everyone was united, then it would be easy. However, everyone was still thinking about the sect trial. How could they be truly united? Some of them were afraid. The artifact in their hands had already attacked the disciples of the other 4 sections. However, the immortal path was in a mess. The nightmare wasn't over yet. From both sides of the immortal path, countless short people like dried corpses crawled out of nowhere. Everyone began to display their own profound skills. Unexpectedly, these little people were extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, they were already riding on top of the people. A pair of sharp claws directly greeted their heads. They were only ordinary disciples. How could they withstand such a huge attack? From time to time, they would vomit blood and fall into the immortal path one after another. When the crowd above saw this scene, everyone's eyes were filled with blood. They felt pity for their dead companions. At this moment, Jiu slowly walked towards the immortal path, as if he was the savior of the world. When everyone saw Jiu, they all gathered behind him. They didn't know why, but this man who looked much younger than them actually gave them a strong sense of security. Mystic skill, Ice River of 10,000 miles. Ding! Host used 10,000 miles of glacier. Obtained 1 by 999 experience points. It seemed that after entering the spirit profound realm, Jiu could freely control the mystic skills in his hands. From time to time, he could even create his own mystic skills. Although the mystic skills he created were only at the yellow stage, he was very confident that as time passed, the mystic skills in his hands would level up because of the system's experience points reward. The Warhound's great sword moved, and suddenly, the temperature in the air dropped. It was as if countless cold air had turned the immortal path into a glacier. Those little people who were baring their fangs and brandishing their claws had just charged forward when they were frozen by this powerful glacier, turning into beautiful ice sculptures. The surrounding people all sucked in a breath of cold air. The mortal profound realm was indeed the mortal profound realm. Just a single mystic skill actually had such a terrifying power. They looked at each other. Fortunately, the competition this time was not in the arena. Otherwise, how could they compete with him with just a few of them? At this moment, a gentle voice entered Ji Yu's ears. "Master!" Hearing this joyous voice, Ji looked up. So it was a young girl he met, the fairy named Rualan. "Why are you here?" Master's question is funny. "I am a fairy from the fallen immortal sect. Why can't I appear here?" Chapter 651. Upon hearing this, Ji finally understood that this girl was actually a fairy from the fallen immortal sect. He patted her head. At this moment, a few hot-blooded men couldn't hold it in anymore. Although they relied on Ji to pass the immortal path, even without Ji, could any one of them pass the immortal path? What a joke. They couldn't help but think in their hearts. At the same time, they took a step forward. They pointed at Ji's nose and shouted, "Where did this lecher come from? Let go of our fairy. Your family is now?" Rualan's heart was filled with doubts when she heard this. She wasn't married yet, so how did she become someone else's? Even if she were married, it should at least be someone like her master. Ji's incomparable handsomeness naturally attracted the attention of these female disciples. It was as if they wanted to stick their eyes on Ji. Ji shrugged nonchalantly and said, "Whatever. What do you want? What do you want?" There was an incomparable majesty in this sentence. But what could they do? Although Ji's martial arts were at the second level of the human profound realm, and no one doubted his level, it was just a trashy cultivation method cultivated by a trashy disciple of the Gold City sect. Any disciple of the magnificent holy sect who was at the 9th level of the spirit profound realm could be transferred to a human profound realm elder of a third-rate sect. Although they were only a second-rate sect in a union of 10,000 immortals and were the trashy fighters among the second-rate sects, it was precisely them who walked into the frozen land and killed those guards of the sect. They also obtained a large number of treasures in the evolving temple. One of them said, "Kid, I think you don't know what's good for you. You just used a profound skill to freeze these villains. What's there to be proud of?" "That's right. How dare you defile a fairy? Die." Ji clearly didn't do anything to Rualan Fairy. Even if he did, it wasn't up to this group of stinky juniors to judge. He was instantly enraged, and he disappeared from where he stood. He definitely had to teach them a lesson. He pulled out the long blade in his hand and swung it down heavily. Suddenly, the surrounding ground shattered. He arrived in front of that brat from the magnificent holy sect who didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. He grabbed their necks with both hands and lifted them up high. They had been pampered since they were young, so they had never seen such a terrifying scene. Even Fairy Rualan from the fallen immortal sect, who was watching this scene from the side, could not bear to see it. Master, they have good intentions. Why don't we just forget about it?" Normally, Rualan was only concerned about the cultivation of her profound energy. When had she ever seen the dangers of the pugilistic world? However, Ji was different. He had traveled extensively and had seen many things. He only said indifferently, "If I let them go so easily now, do you believe that they will dare to plot against me later? They won't." "Really?" The corner of Ji's mouth revealed a trace of a smile. Although they did not know why, they felt that this smile was very scary, but they did not dare to say anything. A mysterious light flashed, and the two stanchions were broken by Ji's punch. It was impossible for them to cultivate again in this lifetime. How can there be such a cruel method? This is the good disciple that you have taught. The sect masters of the 4 great sects all angrily rebuked. Although the sect master Gene City did not know when he had accepted such a disciple, now that he had achieved his goal, it was time to put down his mask. "Ha ha! The elders of the four great sects did not know why this elder of Gene City still had the face to laugh. You have taught such a disciple, but you don't know how to reflect on yourself. What are you laughing about? The sect master of the profound sword sect, Unfettered One, was the first to lose his temper. He used one hand to maintain the seal of the trial hall and the other hand to point forward. In an instant, the bloodless bone sword, a 7th-grade artifact beside him, flew into the air. With the infusion of Xian energy, the 7th-grade artifact turned into more than 80 swords in an instant. Even if others used their own mental strength to infuse the artifact, in a short period of time, they were unable to distinguish which one was the real one. He pointed heavily in the direction of the sect master of Gene City. In an instant, the long sword was directly in front of him. He snorted coldly. It's just a small trick. After saying this, the sword in the air actually stopped in the air. Under the gaze of the sect master of Gene City, it actually fell to the ground. He gasped in surprise and said faintly, "How is this possible? How did you do it?" Hearing the sect master of Gene City's exclamation, he smiled slightly and said faintly, "Don't you think there's something wrong with you now?" After saying this, the sect master of the sword sect closed his eyes. Only then did he realize that the amount of Xian energy he could use was only 1/10 of the usual amount. What is going on? After hearing his exclamation, the rest of the people began to investigate their own internal aura. They found that without exception, the aura of everyone present was getting smaller and smaller. They still didn't understand what was going on. The sect master of the Gene City sect laughed out loud. "It's good that you don't understand. I can't let you die of stupidity. I'm not afraid to tell you that I've already set up a Xian gathering technique in this trial palace. No matter if it's you or them in the trial palace, in the end, all the Xian energy in your body will belong to me. As for how far I can break through to the human profound realm, I don't know myself. In this case, you've helped an absolute Xian cultivator. Are you still happy?" Everyone thought in their hearts that this was shameless, but now that their Dantian had been absorbed by the Xian gathering technique, they could only accept this guy's endless humiliation. At this moment, the sect master of the Gene City sect released his hand and jumped lightly to the top of the trial palace that was hovering in the air. Now, no one could escape from his grasp. He sat down with peace of mind and absorbed the Xian energy that the trial palace brought to him. Shameful. Sect master, forget about them. Why don't you even let us go? The few people of the Gene City sect were very puzzled. Why was their sect master so vicious that he even wanted to absorb their Xian energy? Gene City laughed out loud. Chapter 652. He said indifferently, "If you all don't participate, how can they be fooled? The most important thing is that although the profound strength in your bodies is not much, it is still a part of the profound strength, isn't it?" She listened to his crazy thoughts. All the elders roared, but there was nothing they could do. Right now, they had no way to leave the great array. Moreover, if it wasn't for the remaining profound strength that could be used to protect their main heart meridians, they would have died long ago because of being sucked dry. What was laughable was that after Jin Chung finished absorbing, they might not even be able to keep this little bit of profound strength. "But Sect Master, if you do this, our Jin Chung will be exterminated." Jin Chung immediately laughed out loud. "How can it be so easy to exterminate a sect? There are no more elders. Just use profound stones to recruit more. There are no more inner sect disciples. Just choose from the outer sect." Jiyu also felt that it was a little strange in the training palace. She didn't know if it was because of the mystery of the palace or because of the loss of profound strength in her body. He could feel that his profound strength was constantly flowing away, and it wouldn't stop. If it wasn't for the fact that his strength was strong, he was afraid that he would only be left with the strength of the spirit profound realm. It seemed that he had to pass as soon as possible. Look, a door of light appeared in the air. It seemed that whoever entered the door of light first would be able to obtain the most points. The face of the 5 great sects was completely torn apart in the face of this final challenge. They looked at each other. The disciples of the Imperial Sword sect were the first to lose their patience. They threw out their own treasured weapons, profound swords, and stabbed them into the ground. In the blink of an eye, their bodies seemed to be attracted by the treasured weapons and directly flew towards the treasured weapons. Ridiculous. More than a dozen huge men revealed a disdainful smile. Their bodies instantly disappeared from where they were, and when they reappeared, it was as if they had seen something. When they reappeared, they had already arrived beside the treasured weapons. How can there be such a fast speed? The disciples of the Imperial Sword sect didn't understand either. They only saw the men smile slightly. We, the Ancient Spirit sect, have profound beasts since we were young. Now it's just a small trick. They stood beside the Imperial Sword faction's great treasure and put their hands together. A huge chi aura leisurely came out of their bodies and directly shrouded their bodies. A look of disdain appeared on their faces. The disciples of the Imperial Sword faction directly collided with the chi aura released by the Imperial Sword faction. How about it? Now that you don't have a prized artifact, I want to see how you can break through our defense. The leader laughed and then ordered the disciple who had been hiding behind him to open the light door. The disciples of the other 4 sects were naturally unhappy. The 10 or so female disciples of the fallen immortal faction moved at the same time. The treasures in their hands were long crutches. Speaking of which, it was strange. These crutches swung forward. It actually had the momentum of splitting open the heavens. A loud boom was heard. The Chi gang dispersed abruptly. The disciples of the sword-controlling sect were not fools. They extended their sword fingers. All he said was, "Sword, come." In the blink of an eye, those treasures rose from the ground and flew in their direction. However, those treasures were all blocked by the Ancient Spirit faction. The Imperial Sword faction wanted to use this opportunity to kill all the so-called Ancient Spirit faction in front of them. Even if they couldn't kill you, they could at least injure you, right? They were secretly scheming in their hearts. Those long swords shot in their direction one after another. Although the disciples of the Ancient Spirit faction were a little flustered, they didn't completely lose their minds. They roared and stomped on the ground. His originally glossy skull actually seemed to emit a trace of golden light. They stomped on the ground, accompanied by the violent shaking of the sky. All of them turned into golden people. Those treasures didn't hurt or itch at all when they collided with their bodies. The eldest disciple of the Ancient Spirit faction raised his head proudly and said arrogantly, "Humph, you Imperial Sword faction and the disciples of the fallen immortal sect. So what if you join forces? Do you still want to hurt us?" While speaking, they suddenly heard the sound of violent wind coming from their ears. They immediately looked to the side, only to see a huge iron hammer coming at them with a loud bang. They all took 2 steps back, only to see a group of people who had been silent all this while move. They waved the iron hammers in their hands and heavily smashed them on their bodies. It was accompanied by a scream. They fell to the ground one after another, touching their chests. Looking at the group of people in front of them, they couldn't help but have a trace of evil thoughts in their hearts. How could the Ancient Spirit faction's golden body profound skill allow them to maintain a super strong defensive ability for 3 minutes? Even experts at the peak of the 3rd level of the human profound realm couldn't do anything to them in a short time. But after these 3 minutes, they would be in danger. Originally, they thought that this was just the last stage of the trial, so they took out their trump cards in advance. But they never thought that they would be so vulnerable in front of the other party. They only saw a group of people waving their iron hammers and didn't say much nonsense. They just divided into 3 groups and attacked GU and the others. Although the fallen immortal sect was known for their dexterity, in front of these big iron hammers, they were still defeated. Even their own protective artifacts were shattered by these big iron hammers. Seeing this outside the trial palace, the Gold City faction's leader was very excited. "Old Iron Hammer, I have long known that your faction uses strength to break through everything, but I didn't expect it to be so powerful. Shameless, my Iron Hammer Profound sect naturally leads a faction." The Gold City faction's leader coldly snorted. You are the leader, yet you still don't know. You actually dare to provoke this faction's leader. If it wasn't for the fact that I haven't completely absorbed your profound strength, this old man would have killed you long ago." The old Iron Hammer was not to be outdone. He just sneered and said, "So what if you kill us? Killing us is just to show how strong you are. If you kill us, you won't be able to suppress the 9th-level profound beast in this trial palace. When the profound beast appears, you will also die." The Gold City faction's leader laughed. "I didn't expect it. Did you cultivate your brains? Why do you believe everything this faction's leader says? There are no profound beasts in here at all. I've just added a layer of seal inside. As long as they can pass, they will enter my seal." Chapter 653. Facing Life and Death. The sect leaders of the 4 sects did not hesitate. Thus, they began to curse one after another. "You're really shameless. For the sake of Xian energy, you won't even let go of your own disciples. In this life, this old man only has one son, but he died at the hands of your magnificent Saint Profound sect. Now, this old man just wants an explanation from you. What does this count as? Then what about us? We haven't offended you. You boast that you're a third-rate sect in a union of 10,000 immortals and feel complacent. Now, why are you begging for mercy in front of our 4th-rate sect?" Anyway, scolding was one thing. The current Gene City only felt that he was very happy. It seemed that this was the peak of his life. Thinking of this in his heart, he suddenly laughed out loud. Looking at this shameless villain, they clenched their fists. "Wait for this old man to suck your Xian energy dry. Then I'll play with your fallen immortal sect. Each of you fairies is young and beautiful. I don't know how long this old man has been thinking. With Xian energy to absorb and beauties to be my mount. Haha, my life has reached this point. Even if I can't break through the life and death realm in this life, I should be satisfied." The fallen immortal sect leader's face turned red from his words. Since they entered the sect, they had never suffered such humiliation. Moreover, to have more than 100 female disciples serve a man, an old monster who had lived for hundreds of years, this was simply wishful thinking. But now they had no choice but to lower their arrogant heads. The key was that when their sect recruited disciples, all of them, starting from the sect leader, had to be virgins. Now, how did they fall into his hands? With a sigh, the fallen immortal sect leader had the intention to die. Perhaps sensing her thoughts, the Gene City sect leader said, "Don't think about suicide. Your Xian energy has been sucked dry by me. At most, you'll be reduced to mortals. But if you dare to commit suicide, this old man will gather all of your 3 souls and 7 spirits. Every day, I'll use fire and ice to make you beg for death." After saying this, everyone no longer had the intention to die. On the other side, Ji-Yu's Warhound great sword fell heavily. With a cracking sound, a crack appeared on the Iron Hammer Profound Sect's protective artifact. Even though they knew that their treasures were only of the 7th grade, However, the artifact itself was made of the best black iron. Logically speaking, even a 10th grade artifact would be intimidated by it. How could it be broken so easily? Could it be that Ji-Yu's artifact had already surpassed theirs? After guessing to this point, they could not help but have the intention to kill and steal the treasures. Although they knew that outside of the training palace, there would be the sect leaders and elders of the 5 great sections. But what if they killed Ji-Yu and said that it was an accident? Every time there was a 5 profound gathering, wouldn't it be normal for a few people to die? After making up his mind, the person who was fighting with Ji-Yu suddenly shouted, "Give up on the opponent in front of you and help me take him down." After shouting this sentence, the remaining people, although they did not know why their senior brother shouted like this, they secretly thought that this person had some ability. It was no wonder that their senior brother could not deal with him. They gave up on the Gold City sect's disciples in front of them. Those disciples still wanted to resist, but they just smashed down with their hammers. How could these inner disciples resist the other side's direct disciples? It could be assumed that the direct disciples were the people that the elders of the various sects wanted to pass on all their skills to. Sure enough, after they were struck by this profound skill, they all retreated explosively. They even spat out a mouthful of blood. The remaining Iron Hammer sect's disciples gathered together with that disciple. They all rushed towards Ji-Yu's direction. Ji-Yu smiled faintly. Ignorant. Looking at the unchanging expression on Ji-Yu's face, they were naturally delighted. In a battle between profound practitioners, the most dreadful thing was to underestimate one's opponent. Now that Ji-Yu had delivered herself to them, they could not wait for Ji-Yu to look down on them. Thinking of this, they directly rushed towards Ji-Yu's direction. Spinning his body, the big hammer in his hand became even more powerful. It was as if there was a gust of wind. Unexpectedly, a tornado appeared on the spot where he was standing. When the surrounding people saw this scene, they were all shocked and their mouths were wide open. How is this possible? What a strong fusion, profound skill. Although the people from the other two sects were pressured by the Iron Hammer sect in front of them to the point that they could not breathe. However, they did not face such a predicament. They raised their heads and were extremely shocked. As for the remaining Iron Hammer sect's disciples, they had a disdainful smile on their faces. Kill! 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 After shouting out these words, Yi Zichen shouted out. The hurricane attacked Ji-Yu's direction. Looking at the power of the hurricane, it was probably at the first level of the spirit profound realm. If it was the Ji-Yu from yesterday, perhaps she would have a trace of fear. However, in today's Ji-Yu's eyes, it was simply trash. Ding! The host used Fierce Wind Blade. Obtain 1 by 999 experience points. The fierce wind blade struck towards their bodies, causing them to abruptly take 2 steps back. They could only see the 2 hurricanes colliding in a short moment. It seemed that they would not be able to determine who was up and who was down in a short period of time. The corner of Ji-Yu's mouth slightly smiled. They did not seem to understand what it was, but their bodies had already controlled the big hammer to enter the hurricane. They only felt that the 2 hurricanes had merged together. However, under normal circumstances, they were like the eye of the storm. There would not be any problems. However, right now, they felt as if they were heavily slapped in the face by someone. Because within the hurricane, it was as if there were countless blades that were scraping their flesh. However, this kind of pain went straight to their souls. There was not a single trace of injury on their bodies. Their hearts became more and more anxious. What should they do? What should they do? Among them, one of the smarter ones shouted, "His profound skill requires the use of artifacts. Why don't we just directly break his artifact? Let's see how arrogant he can be." When everyone heard this, they felt that this was the best method out of all possible methods. Thinking of this, they controlled their bodies and directly charged towards Ji-Yu. The corner of Ji-Yu's mouth revealed a disdainful smile. They only saw her gently raise one hand, and the warhound's great sword in her hand suddenly struck out. A loud rumbling sound rang out. Suddenly, the 2 forces collided with each other in an instant, and a huge, mysterious light shone. Chapter 654. The corner of Ji-Yu's mouth revealed a trace of an evil smile. The 4 of them charged forward, and their target was Ji-Yu's warhound's greatsword. He did not panic and just threw the warhound's greatsword away. 5 types of inherited Xian energy suddenly reinforced it. The people of Iron Hammer sect panicked, but the arrow on the bow had to be released. They gritted their teeth and concentrated all of their Xian Qi into their long swords. With a heavy swing of their swords, a loud rumbling sound rang out. Ji-Yu's warhound's greatsword safely returned to Ji-Yu's hand. As for the Iron Hammer sect's hammers, they all shattered without exception. Ji-Yu fell to the ground and waved his hand, creating a gale. Ding! The host used Fierce Wind Blade. Obtain 1 by 999 experience points. The difference between the 2 sides was decided in an instant. Ji-Yu said indifferently, "You lost." In the blink of an eye, the Fierce Wind Blade appeared and posed a huge threat to them. When they saw Ji-Yu's cold eyes, Their hearts suddenly trembled. He said indifferently, "If you put down the artifact now, I can still let you go." The people of Iron Hammer Sect looked at each other and said indifferently, "What do we do? What else can we do? Brothers, let's attack together and kill him." Yes, the artifact in his hand is a rare artifact. Only by taking the artifact in his hand can we stop him from being so powerful. Hearing this, for some reason, Jiyu had the urge to laugh. He smiled faintly and raised his hand. Suddenly, the Warhound's great sword in his hand disappeared without a trace. The people of Iron Hammer Sect were instantly enraged. "You actually dare to look down on us? Preposterous die." The people who were fighting with the other sects all retreated and looked at the arrogant kid in front of them. They smiled faintly. Although our Iron Hammer Sect Xian skills are not the most powerful, the strength in our hands is not something that anyone can look down on. After shouting this sentence, everyone looked at each other. The artifacts in their hands suddenly flew out. Everyone grabbed the hammers in their hands and ran towards Jiyu's direction. When they saw this scene, the remaining people surrounded Jiyu. They raised the hammers in their hands and threw them in Jiyu's direction. At this moment, Jiyu disappeared from where he was. His body was burning with a raging fire. It burned the hammer and showed signs of melting it. They anxiously took a step back, and in the blink of an eye, Jiyu suddenly ran 2 to 3 steps forward and raised the armor in his hand. At this moment, the flames on his body became stronger and stronger. The flames on his body appeared on Jiyu's fingertips. With a thought from Jiyu, the flames left Jiyu's sword fingers and flew out like missiles. With a boom, the people of Iron Hammer Sect were blown up, and not a single one of them was left. On top of that, Jiyu's killing intent had been aroused. Without exception, the hammers in their hands were all swallowed up by the flames in Jiyu's hand. Jiyu said faintly, "Now you're obedient." After witnessing Jiyu's terrifying strength, how could they have the guts to enter the door of light? They looked at each other and opened up a path for Jiyu. When Jiyu saw this scene, he slowly walked forward and arrived in front of the door of light. Within the door of light, a number array flashed. He didn't expect that such profound knowledge would exist in this small world of Xian cultivators. It was only the multiplication method. How could it be difficult for Jiyu? However, at this moment, a trace of vigilance appeared in Jiyu's heart. He glanced at the people beside him and said to the disciples of Gold City, "Come forward and see if you can break the mechanism on the door." That person took a step forward and saw the multiplication table on the door. He couldn't help but laugh. This is such a simple problem for mortals. How can we not know how to solve it? When he heard this, Jiyu felt that things weren't that simple. With the mentality that it was better to let others die than to die, Jiyu grabbed a disciple of Iron Hammer Sect and asked him to solve the problem. The disciple of Iron Hammer Sect sneered. Perhaps it was because the past master saw that it was the last test, so he naturally relaxed his vigilance. Or perhaps it was because he wanted the 5 great sects to fight each other. Considering that the final victor would definitely not have any Shinshi left, what would he use to open the door? Therefore, he used such a simple method to seal it. This Jiyu was still stupid enough to think that no one could open the door, or that there was something strange behind the door. He was simply stupid to the extreme. When he thought of this, he couldn't help but smile and walk forward. Under the door plate, he easily moved the numbers on the mechanism. When the problems were solved one by one, the door opened. Congratulations to all of you for passing the test. The one who opened the door will enter first and obtain the highest score. The rest of you will enter in order and leave the training palace. The disciple of Iron Hammer Sect laughed. He glanced at Jiyu complacently. However, he couldn't defeat Jiyu, so he didn't dare to mock him. After all, there was nothing to say when one's skill was inferior. Jiyu smiled faintly and gestured for them to enter. Although he had given the opportunity to win this round, it wasn't the time to find out who was stronger and who was weaker. He waved his hand faintly. Immediately, everyone entered the door in a frenzy. Jiyu also followed the crowd into the door. When he saw a flash of brilliance, Jiyu shouted in his heart. If it was any other time, Jiyu would understand that this was just a small trap. However, Jiyu had already entered this trap. It would definitely trigger a tremor in heaven and earth. When he thought of this, he sighed slightly. When the people next to him saw Jiyu, they sighed as well. "Brother Jiyu, may I ask what happened to you?" The person who spoke was from the Imperial Sword sect. Although their skill was inferior, they didn't directly attack Jiyu and the others. Now, they could still restore the friendship between the various sections. Jiyu smiled slightly. "You don't know. This is a conspiracy. It's a formation. Moreover, we are all trapped in this formation. There's no way to break it from the inside." Chapter 655. What? We don't have a way to break it from the inside. When they heard Jiyu's words, their hearts trembled slightly. If this continued, wouldn't they be spending the rest of their lives here? Hearing this, the first to break down was the Ancient Spirit Clan. Their Ancient Spirit Clan was the clan closest to the top clans. Now, as the most outstanding disciples of this clan, they were trapped here. When they thought of this, they took the lead and took a step forward. "Junior brothers, you're the best at learning array formations among us. Come give it a try." After saying this, everyone looked at each other and nodded one after another. "Okay, I promise you." After saying this, everyone took a step forward. Their eyes were full of blood. They released the dark force in their bodies and poured it into the array. They only saw that the array suddenly emitted a bright light. Before they could find the array core of the array, the profound energy in their bodies had already been sucked dry. They couldn't help but gasp. In an instant, all the dark force in their bodies was sucked dry. They couldn't help but tremble. Jiyu said indifferently, "Give up." Several disciples of the Jinsheng faction collapsed in their hearts. They sat directly on the ground and burst into tears. Jiyu frowned and asked, "What's there to cry about?" After hearing Jiyu's words, the rest of the people cried even harder. They cried and said, "We don't want to do it. We don't want to do it." "Why do you say that? It wasn't easy for us to pass so many tests. Why can't we go back?" Jiyu laughed again. "How could they be so ignorant?" He said indifferently, "Do you think that these tests were made by your master? Isn't it?" Their small eyes were filled with incredulity. How could this matter be fake? They looked at each other. Jiyu said indifferently, "That might be the case in the beginning. However, this array formation is able to suck away all of our profound energy. One look, and I can tell that it's not a good array formation. I believe it's to suck away all of our profound energy. And once the dark force is sucked dry, there's no way to replenish it. It's just a small trial. How could it be so vicious?" When they heard that Jiyu understood all the key points, they immediately understood. Jiyu said faintly, "If that's the case, then it's up to me." He pulled out the Warhound sword and stabbed it into the ground. The dark force directly passed through the sword and into the ground. Seeing this scene, he said indifferently, "Come out." The dark force kept coming from the ground. Outside the trial palace, everyone's dark force was being sucked away by the Gold City sect master. He laughed out loud and looked like he was enjoying it, especially the young disciples inside. If their dark force was transferred to their bodies, who knew what kind of scene it would be? When they thought of this, their hearts were suddenly filled with joy. He said with a faint smile, "Just obediently accept your deaths." At this moment, the air suddenly shook. Jiyu had found the array core. "I need someone to protect my body." After saying this, he closed his eyes. Everyone naturally knew who Jiyu was referring to. Now that everyone was in trouble, how could anyone destroy Jiyu's body? Thinking of this, they all came in front of Jiyu and slowly blocked Jiyu's body. When he saw the Gold City sect, Fairy Rulin, and the others standing in front of Jiyu to protect her, he felt relieved and closed his eyes. No one knew that Jiyu still had a life-saving treasure in her body. Once someone had the intention to kill him, the 18 golden puppets would definitely appear. In addition, the 5 great sects would be fighting each other, so he would definitely be able to escape unscathed. With this thought in mind, Jiyu's soul walked out of the cave. She went through the Warhound sword and entered the ground. The 3 divine beasts were like Jiyu's most obedient children. The weapon spirits of other sects' weapons were mainly in human form. Only Ji-Yu's artifact spirit was like an obedient and terrifying Xian beast. He wondered if those grandmasters who forged treasured artifacts would change their worldview after hearing this news. He said faintly, "Do you understand human language?" The dark beasts raised their heads and nodded, indicating that they could understand what Ji-Yu was saying. "Today, I'll bring you back to glory." After saying this, the three Xian beasts entered the ground one after another. Presumably, such a profound array would definitely have a treasure as the core of the array, and this treasure would be the best food for the tool spirit. All the Xian beasts' eyes shone with a trace of light. Ji-Yu brought them underground, only to see that the wind around them was howling. He said faintly, "Do you see what we're looking for?" The long snake took the lead and flew out, wandering around the area. The giant tiger did not dare to fall behind. The souls of the giant dog and the rhinoceros were already flying around. Ji-Yu smiled faintly and said, "It seems that you won't be able to find it either." He recalled that although the array required a treasure as the eye of the array, if he needed to find the most powerful thing in the world when facing the array, he would need to find the best location. In other words, he had to go underground. He kept flying towards the ground, only to see layers of earth and rocks appearing in front of him. He sneered and pulled out the long sword in front of him. He swung it out, and all the earth and rocks disappeared. Then, he came to a sea of fire. The sea of fire forced the three weapon spirits to stay close to Ji-Yu. It was too hot. Ji-Yu's mouth revealed a disdainful smile. "Fire, is it?" The fire inheritance in his body started to move. The endless sea of fire kept entering Ji-Yu's body. Ding! The host has activated the fire inheritance. Obtained 1 by 999 experience points. As the system's voice kept ringing, the sea of fire kept increasing Ji-Yu's dark force. With the addition of these two things, the fire inheritance broke through to the third level of the spirit profound realm. Chapter 656. The sea of fire gradually decreased under Ji-Yu's absorption. In the next moment, it was all integrated into Ji-Yu's body. Ji-Yu suddenly opened her eyes wide and said lightly, "Absorb." After shouting this sentence, the large sea of fire instantly integrated into Ji-Yu's body. In the blink of an eye, Ji-Yu disappeared on the spot. Ji-Yu pulled out a flame and heavily bombarded the ground below. After a loud bang, Ji-Yu flew down. Suddenly, a long roar was heard. The corners of Ji-Yu's mouth curled into a smile. "It's out, it's out." He was filled with joy in his heart. This was the artifact spirit of the artifact. They would only attack Ji-Yu directly, but the Warhound's greatsword in Ji-Yu's hand would directly tear them apart. After thinking of this, Ji-Yu waved her hand heavily. The three giant beasts were even crazier than Ji-Yu. They gathered together and charged directly at Ji-Yu. The three Xian beasts saw a huge figure. He let out a roar. They raised their heads and roared heavily. Even if they had become weapon spirits, they could not tolerate any threat, especially from their own kind. After being roared at like this, they all raised their heads and roared out in anger. That loud voice turned out to be the Kuan Peng. Ji-Yu was stunned. She did not expect that it would become like this. The four Xian beasts had already merged together and started fighting. Ji-Yu retreated to one side and watched them fight. In the next moment, the Kuan Peng suddenly opened its bloody mouth. Then its big mouth came in front of Ji-Yu and the others. Ji-Yu smiled contemptuously and turned around, only to see it suddenly raise its hand. At this moment, the three giant beasts in front of her were directly swallowed by the Kuan Peng. Ji-Yu did not expect that the Kuan Peng would swallow them in an instant. Ji-Yu frowned and disappeared in the blink of an eye. In the next moment, she came in front of the other party. Ji-Yu raised her hand, and the soul power in her body was instantly released to the extreme. The flame directly wrapped around Ji-Yu's fists. She wildly hammered in the direction of the Kuan Peng. At this moment, the Kuan Peng kept flapping its wings, but under Ji-Yu's crazy attack, the Kuan Peng did not have any strength to fight back. It disappeared in the blink of an eye. Ji directly raised her hand and punched out. Boom, boom, boom. With 3 loud sounds, the Kuan Peng fell into the sea of fire in an instant. Ji raised her hand. If Ji was in the array, she could clearly see that the huge warhound sword that was inserted into the ground shook violently at this moment. The long sword began to tremble uncontrollably. At this moment, the long sword let out a roar and flew down in the next moment. With 2 bangs, the people on both sides crazily collided with each other. Ji raised her hand, and a Xian energy enveloped the Kuan Peng. The Kuan Peng could not move. Perhaps only it knew that Ji wanted to use it as the next weapon spirit. At this moment, it roared and directly rushed in the direction of Ji. Ji snorted and slowly raised her hand. He turned into a beam of white light and arrived in front of Ji in the blink of an eye. Ji immediately extended his hand and swung it. Even if the Kuan Peng wanted to leave, it could not escape from Ji's hand. Under the Xian light, its body gradually became smaller and smaller. Finally, it turned into a small ball of light in Ji's hand. He said lightly, "Let's see if you are convinced or not." He saw that the treasure weapon below was fighting with Ji for control of the treasure weapon. Ji frowned, and in the time it took to turn around, it flew down. She said lightly, "Damn it." After saying that, the treasure appeared in front of Ji. It was a small silver basin. Ji snorted coldly. His hands formed a sword and stabbed into the silver basin. Following a loud kacha sound, the silver basin split into 2 in an instant. There was no way for the weapon spirit to possess the silver treasure. The weapon spirit flew up directly and roared as if the 9 heavens were about to tremble. It directly rushed in the direction of Ji. Ji raised her hand and saw the Kuan Peng's figure shrink again. Now it was just in the shape of a little bird. It was still flapping its wings continuously. Ji flew behind the little bird, and by the time he arrived in front of it, it had already returned to its original position before the astral projection. The surrounding people came forward one after another. They drew their long swords and surrounded Ji and the others. Ji snorted and forced the Kuan Peng into the giant sword. In an instant, the giant sword flew into Ji's hand, and Ji pulled it out. Fairy Rulin spat out a mouthful of blood and fell into a pool of blood. Ji came forward and helped her up. She said lightly, "Who hurt you like this?" After hearing Ji's question, Fairy Rulin raised her hand and pointed at the Iron Hammer sect in front of her. Ji looked at them coldly and said, "You're courting death." They scoffed. Now that the trial is over, it seems like Fairy Rulin might die. When we get out later, all we have to do is say that you were the one who killed her. The Gold City sect leader alone will be able to kill all of you. Ji smiled faintly. "You'll have to be alive to get out of here alive first." As she spoke, Ji put a pill in her mouth. After swallowing the pill, a trace of golden light appeared in her eyes, and she slowly floated up. She raised her hand, and in an instant, Fairy Rulin's aura gradually became stronger. Ji said indifferently, "It's time for you to be on your way." After saying this, Ji locked her gaze on them. Ji waved the giant sword in her hand. Suddenly, a giant Kuan Peng flew out from her sword. Although the giant sword had already fused with Ji's hand, it was still in her hand. After seeing the Kuan Peng, everyone in front of her trembled. Chapter 657. The Kuan Peng's size stunned everyone present. The Warhound's greatsword in Ji's hand had been completely renamed as the Kuan Peng sword. The weapon spirit that had fused with the 4 Xian beasts was incomparably powerful. The people of the profound Iron Hammer sect wanted to take advantage of the time when Ji's body was separated from his body to take his life. They didn't expect that several large sects would protect him. Forget about that. After Ji woke up, it was as if he had changed into a different person. A heavy sword was swung out. Suddenly, a tsunami of Xian Qi swarmed over. What was even more terrifying was that his weapon spirit was actually the Kuan Peng. The Kuan Peng spread its wings and covered the sky. In an instant, it covered the entire trial palace. Even the people in the trial palace could feel this terrifying qianqi. A loud rumbling sound rang out. The people of the profound Iron Hammer sect fell into a pool of blood. The trial palace also collapsed. The Gold City sect master flew out and landed in an absolutely safe position. Without the trial palace's restriction, the sect masters and elders of the various sects regained their freedom. They looked at Ji Yu's direction with vigilance. Unfortunately, Ji had been out for too long. Their qianqi had long been absorbed by the trial palace. I didn't expect you to be able to come out. The Gold City sect master's eyes were sharp, as if he wanted to see through the youth in front of him. How strong is he? How can he break my array? The profound Iron Hammer sect master was heartbroken. My good disciple. He crazily threw himself on the group of corpses on the ground as tears kept flowing out of his eyes. Ji Yu lightly asked, "Who is the sacred profound sect master?" An old man wearing a red robe slowly stood up. He stroked his beard and said with a sage-like appearance, "This old man is the sacred profound sect master." Ji Yu walked in front of him. "How do I enter the extreme north?" As soon as he finished speaking, all the sect masters present who knew about that matter looked in Ji Yu's direction in disbelief. How did he know about this matter? All of a sudden, a trace of doubt appeared in everyone's hearts. Ji Yu said indifferently, "You don't need to know how I know. I just need to know how to get in." Ji Yu's human profound realm strength was fully released, suppressing everyone's head. The sect leader of the flourishing Saint Profound sect was completely crushed by this terrifying profound energy. He said faintly, "All right, whatever you say." Ji Yu pulled back her hand. With a loud rumble, dark clouds suddenly covered the sky, and countless bolts of lightning fell. What a powerful, profound energy. I want your profound energy. The head of the Jincheng sect suddenly laughed out loud. Dozens of flags flew out of his hand and floated in the sky. He gently pointed his finger. The 10 flags shone with a golden color. In the blink of an eye, they had already surrounded Ji Yu. The profound energy in Ji Yu's body flowed like the sea to the head of the Jincheng sect. He closed his eyes tightly and didn't move. He just looked at her as if she was an ant that was about to die. The head of the Jincheng sect was shocked. Why is this kid looking at me like this? What is he thinking? The more he thought about it, the more scared he became. He didn't know what Ji Yu was up to. He only knew that in his heart, the fear of Ji Yu was getting stronger and stronger. He couldn't bear this torture anymore, so he just increased the output of profound energy in his hand. Another wave of frightening profound energy pressure slowly descended. Ji Yu snorted disdainfully. "Absorb. Let's see how much you can absorb." In fact, it wasn't that Ji Yu didn't know this kind of profound skill that absorbed people's profound energy. It was just that she didn't use it rarely. She was also interested to see where the limit of her opponent was. The head of the Jincheng sect had already absorbed all the profound energy of Ji Yu's fire inheritance. But when he saw Ji Yu's body was still erupting with powerful, profound energy. I didn't expect this guy to have such a terrifying, profound energy. He has inherited more than 2 powers of inheritance. What? Even our ancient Xian lineage, this is extremely rare. How is his small body able to contain the power of 2 inheritances? The heads of several sects started to discuss with each other. Although they knew clearly that if Ji Yu couldn't defeat the head of the Jincheng sect in front of her today, then she would face the problem of life and death. They were satisfied to be able to see such a peerless genius before they died. Ji Yu looked at the head of the Jincheng sect in front of her with disdain. The sky-splitting mysterious skill in her body had been running continuously, and the cultivation method became more and more powerful. The head of the Jincheng sect was suddenly frightened. "This guy, why can't I absorb it dry? Don't you have 2 powers of inheritance? I'll just absorb it." After making up his mind, the head of the Jincheng sect increased the absorption power of the profound skill in his hand. The 2nd powers of inheritance was also absorbed completely. But along with it, there was a 3rd powers of inheritance. All the heads of the sect saw it. Ji Yu couldn't be described as a genius anymore. She was simply a monster, a complete monster. Impossible, impossible. The head of the Jinsheng sect looked at Ji Yu with fear in his eyes. The third powers of inheritance was absorbed completely. The fourth. How could a person accommodate 4 powers of inheritance? No matter. Now the arrow is on the string. I have to shoot. The 5th powers of inheritance. Is this guy still human? And each of the powers of inheritance was at the 2nd tier of the human profound realm. This is really terrifying. After thinking of this in his heart, he suddenly said, "Kid, who are you?" "I'm just a profound practitioner." "Damn, who doesn't know that their mother is a woman?" After Ji Yu's 5th power of inheritance had been sucked dry, his body continued to explode with powerful, profound energy. Ding! The host used the sky-splitting technique and gained 1 by 999 experience points. The voice of the system kept ringing in Ji Yu's ears. And in the face of the sky-splitting technique, which could accommodate endless profound strength between heaven and earth, the head of the Jinsheng sect couldn't absorb the profound strength in Ji Yu's body no matter how hard he tried. This is really too scary. Ji Yu suddenly raised her hand and said, "If you want it, I'll give it to you." After saying this, the profound strength in Ji Yu's body was filled again. All of a sudden, all 5 powers of inheritance were replenished. Seeing this scene, not to mention the head of the Jinsheng sect, even everyone present was stunned. Chapter 658. After saying that, Ji Yu's sky-splitting mysterious skill was activated to the extreme. Although the Gold City sect leader wanted to withdraw his Xian energy, it was already too late. There was no way to withdraw the Xian energy in his hand. The more he thought about it, the more anxious he became. The Xian energy in his hand was gradually released in an instant. He didn't expect that Ji Yu's Xian skill would be so powerful. "I can't absorb it anymore. I can't absorb it anymore." The Gold City sect leader thought crazily in his heart. This strength was simply too terrifying. He shouted loudly and pulled out his precious weapon. With a heavy wave of his hand, his arm was instantly broken. An arm fell to the ground. He gasped for breath and said, "Kid, you have guts." Ji Yu smiled faintly and said, "A strong man breaks his arm." The Gold City sect leader is so bold. "Originally, you and I got along fine. I just wanted to know the way to the polar region, but you didn't have eyes. Then I will kindly accept your Xian skill." Ding! The host used the Xian absorption skill. Obtained experience points 1 by a 999. The Gold City sect leader's body floated up. The Xian energy that he absorbed from the crowd and from Ji Yu all returned to Ji Yu. Not only that, the original Xian energy in his body was also constantly being absorbed. How was this possible? No wonder that kid was not afraid of him at all. It turned out that he also had such a powerful Xian skill. He looked at Ji Yu in horror and watched as the muscles on his body gradually dried up. The Xian energy in his body was also sucked dry by Ji Yu. He said faintly, "I lost. If I didn't take the initiative to provoke you, I wouldn't have ended up like this." Ji Yu nodded without hesitation. To be honest, the life and death of the 5 great Xian sects had nothing to do with Ji Yu. He deserved to die for offending her. When all the profound energy in his body had been completely absorbed by Ji Yu, he sat on the ground and started crying. He had never expected that after painstakingly researching for his entire life, he would get this one chance and he would succeed. However, the profound energy in his body had also been sucked dry. When he thought of this, he inexplicably felt incomparably wronged. He even felt like crying, but there was no way for tears to appear. This was because the suction force from Ji Yu's body was countless times stronger than the cultivation technique he obtained in the secret realm. In the blink of an eye, the profound energy in his body completely disappeared. When he landed on the ground, his eyes began to turn white, and his body disappeared from this world like dust. Seeing Ji Yu's terrifying strength, everyone's hearts began to tremble. Ji Yu took a step forward and said calmly, "Sect leader of Sheng, it's time to hand over the secret passage." The sect leader of Sheng sighed. If he didn't want to die now, He could only obey obediently. However, there was a trace of unwillingness in his heart. Why did our lives have to be in the hands of someone like her? He sighed and took out a sect leader's token. He threw it into Ji-Yu's hands. After receiving the token, he said calmly, "The entrance to the secret passage is in the secret chamber of the Shang-Xian sect. Originally, this token was held by each of the 5 great sects, but now, the sect leader of Jin City's token is also in your hands, right?" The remaining sect leaders did not dare to be careless. They all took out their tokens and handed them to Ji-Yu. Ji-Yu cupped her hands and thanked them. Then, she took out a bottle of medicine and threw it to the sect leaders. Fairy Rulin looked at the handsome Ji-Yu, and her heart suddenly bloomed like a flower. He was so handsome and so powerful. Wouldn't he be able to reach the peak of the Xian sect in the future? The elders of the Jin City sect also saw this. They all knelt on the ground and said, "Young Master Ji-Yu, please take over the Jin City sect." Ji-Yu glanced at the token in his hand. It was a good idea, so he agreed. There were countless mystical skills here. Ji-Yu could learn them all with just a glance. When the elders saw that Ji-Yu had such a strong learning ability, they suddenly felt that it was not a big deal, even if their powers were not restored. With Ji-Yu around, the day of Jincheng's revival would be tomorrow. Ji-Yu sat on a mystical beast. He needed to go to the extreme north of the Shang-Xian sect. Now, he only needed to go to 2 more sub-halls to revive the Ice Queen. Of course, Ji did not tell anyone about this. They thought that Ji-Yu wanted to go there to get the treasure. They had gone there before and even defeated the people who live there all year round. Only the guardians who were in deep sleep underground had not awakened. However, this was not important anymore. They were now useless. When they returned, the disciples who survived the trial palace would be able to take over the positions of the elders. The carriage shook continuously. After 2 months, they finally arrived at the territory of the Shang-Xian sect. It was indeed the territory of the Shang-Xian sect. This place had already developed into a small city formation. Ji raised her head and looked forward. Hundreds of people descended from the sky. They immediately surrounded Ji and knelt at the feet of the sect leader who was beside her. "Welcome back, Holy Lord." The sect leader of the Shang-Xian sect walked out of the carriage and said calmly, "Everyone, please rise." When everyone saw that their sect leader did not have any trace of mystical energy on him, they were very curious. Could it be that their sect leader had broken through? Who would have thought that what made everyone surprised was, after the sect leader returned, he immediately announced that he was no longer the sect leader of the Shang-Xian sect and handed over everything to his successor disciple. Everyone was very surprised. However, their strength was not as powerful as the successor disciple, so they did not dare to say much. After meeting their surprised gazes, the sect leader of the Shang-Xian sect brought Ji to a huge stone at the back of the mountain. They only saw that the stone was shining with a golden light, as if it was the most wonderful existence between heaven and earth. He made a gesture of invitation. Ji took a step forward and gently placed her palm on it. A golden light completely lit up. The stone emitted a golden light. The 5 tokens on her body all floated up. This golden light attracted the attention of the entire Shang-Xian sect. What kind of mysterious existence was this? He cupped his hands and said to Ji, "This old man has no more mystical energy now, so I can't accompany you in." Ji nodded and stepped forward into the golden light. In the blink of an eye, Ji disappeared. When she reappeared, she was already in another big world. Chapter 659. Unexpectedly, the snow started to flutter in the air, only to see the snow fluttering down. But that didn't happen. The cold wind suddenly blew at this moment. The falling snow was more than 3 feet long. Ji looked coldly in front of him, his heart turning cold. He had just taken a step forward. The snowflakes suddenly fell in front of Ji instantly disappeared from where she was and ran forward. The surrounding snowflakes were all around her. At this moment, the air froze. Ji disappeared on the spot in the blink of an eye. but the snow froze Ji-Yu's Chi Gang in an instant. Ji-Yu's dark force was activated to the maximum, and the power of the flame covered Ji-Yu's body. The flames continued to spread. He reached out and waved his hand gently. In an instant, the flame gradually turned its head. There was a flame floating in the air. At this moment, the ground suddenly shook. A giant beast that was more than 10 feet tall appeared from the ground. The giant beast locked its eyes on Ji-Yu. Roar! The giant beast let out a furious roar and charged in Ji-Yu's direction. Ji-Yu raised his hand. Suddenly, the giant beast pounced in front of Ji-Yu. The flame slowly fell and blocked in front of Ji-Yu. The flame collided with the Chi Gang. With a loud bang, Ji-Yu disappeared on the spot in the blink of an eye. He took a step back. Ji-Yu disappeared on the spot in the blink of an eye. He slowly took a step forward. At this moment, the giant beast ran out. It leaped and flew in front of Ji-Yu. Ji-Yu suddenly raised his hand and blocked in front of him. The giant beast kept retreating. It roared twice and moved slightly. At this moment, the human and the giant beast were crazily punching each other. Boom, boom, boom. At this moment, they were all sent flying backward. Right at that moment, the profound energy in Ji-Yu's hand suddenly gathered together in a frenzy. The giant beast patted his chest as if on this piece of land. He looked at Ji-Yu in front of him and suddenly ran out to face Ji-Yu in front of him. He swung his fist. He raised his hand, and a loud bang was heard. All the dark force flew out at this moment. Ding! The host used Wind-Ripping Blade. Obtained experience points 1 by 999. The wind-rending blade arrived in front of the giant beast. Originally, it was a world of ice and snow. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew and arrived in front of the giant beast. Large patches of snowflakes fell onto the giant beast's body, causing him to fall to the ground. Countless amounts of ice, profound energy, slowly flew towards Ji-Yu at this moment. Ji disappeared on the spot. He raised his hand, and suddenly he swung his fist again. Another loud bang was heard. The giant beast was directly sent flying backward. He slid on the ground, and Ji swung his fist heavily. The power of the Kuin Peng flew out at this moment and directly arrived in front of the giant beast. The Kuin Peng did not pass through Ji-Yu's body, but through his. A trace of white appeared in the giant beast's eyes. The giant beast stared blankly with its mouth wide open and fell down. With a loud bang, he fell to the ground. Ji-Yu's Kuin Peng directly absorbed it. He disappeared on the spot and flew forward. He raised his hand, and at this moment, heavy dark force pressed down. He shrunk the giant beast in front of him. At this moment, a strong mental strength poured into the giant beast, and the threads of dark force tied it up. He pulled it up. At this moment, the giant beast in front of him stood up slowly. The giant beast had already become a puppet in Ji-Yu's hands. He carried the warhound's greatsword and walked forward, arriving in front of the evolving temple. In the end, Ji-Yu decided not to disturb those who were sleeping underground. He walked into the temple with the soul rope. "Kid, be careful." The Ice Queen's words directly affected Ji-Yu's body. His gaze locked onto the stone statue in front of him. With a loud boom, the statue exploded. The Ice Queen's figure appeared in front of Ji-Yu. Ji-Yu shrugged. He said to the person in front of him, "You go." The remnant soul looked at Ji-Yu in disdain. She directly walked in front of that person. Ji-Yu disappeared on the spot. There was no need to interfere in a battle between women. Moreover, this woman was fighting with her own soul. At this moment, the two figures were fighting each other. With a loud rumble, Ji-Yu disappeared. Shortly after, the Queen of Ice and Frost fused with the two remnant souls. She stood up and fused with the two remnant souls in an instant. A loud rumbling sound was heard. At this moment, the rest of the people ran forward and jumped up. Ji disappeared on the spot. He raised his hand. At this moment, an aura shield appeared on his body. He disappeared on the spot. In the next moment, Ji took out a treasure weapon. An aura shield covered his body. A loud bang sounded. At this moment, the two goddesses started fighting. However, the main character was stronger. When he saw the Queen of Ice, The person attached to the stone statue tried to escape frantically. She wanted to escape from the Ice Queen. Although she was only a remnant soul, she longed for freedom. True freedom. As a soul with thoughts, she wanted to leave. Jiyu said calmly, "You want to leave?" That wouldn't do. Jiyu disappeared on the spot. In the blink of an eye, the warhound's great sword appeared. He heavily slashed at the other party. Then he appeared on the spot. He said calmly, "Is it that hard to let me go?" Jiyu shook his head. "Cute queen, either you die now or she dies." After saying this, the Ice Queen looked at Jiyu with resentment. It was as if she was a demon in the human world. The Ice Queen's soul disappeared on the spot and avoided Jiyu. She sensed Jiyu's profound realm strength and didn't want to be entangled with him. However, as Jiyu slammed his hands on the ground, at this moment, several ice walls surrounded the Ice Queen's divided soul. The soul knew that Jiyu didn't want to let her live. She resentfully turned around. Spiritual power was released. At this moment, it gathered. A loud rumbling sound was heard. Chapter 660. A powerful spiritual power spread out. In the Ice Queen's heart, a trace of vigilance appeared. She raised her head with a frown. Not good. Jiyu wants to self-destruct. After shouting this, he disappeared on the spot and appeared in front of Jiyu in the blink of an eye. Jiyu looked in front of the Ice Queen. When the Ice Queen released her spiritual power to suppress the divided soul revealed a smile and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Damn, I was tricked by her. The Ice Queen angrily shook the giant thing in front of her. Jiyu took in a cold breath. All right, don't be angry. Let's see what we should do next. The cold Ice Queen felt like a little girl for the first time. Jiyu closed her eyes and released her powerful spiritual power, but she couldn't sense the existence of the divided soul. The Ice Queen had a time limit every time she came out. In the blink of an eye, she returned to Jiyu's soul rope. Jiyu disappeared in the blink of an eye. When she appeared in the next moment, she was already 100 miles away. When she left the extreme north, Jiyu appeared in the sacred, rich, profound sect. Countless disciples were holding weapons, waiting at the bottom of the mountain. After all, the sect master's profound strength had been crippled. For the entire sacred, rich, profound sect, this was a great shame. Their eyes were locked onto Jiyu. Only he knows about this matter. As long as we kill him, no one will know about this. It was unknown who shouted first, but the rest of the people charged in Jiyu's direction. Jiyu raised the warhound's great sword in her hand and swung it down. In an instant, there was a flash of light in the sky. Ding! The host has used Fierce Windblade. Obtained 1 by 999 experience points. Amidst the gale, there were countless heavy blades that directly cut wounds on everyone. Jiyu instantly disappeared from where he was. By the time he arrived at the edge of the crowd, there was already a group of people lying in a pool of blood. He sneered and disappeared from where he stood. Now that he had learned that the union of 10,000 immortals was paying attention to the divided soul, Jiyu absolutely could not let the divided soul of the Queen of Ice and Frost be taken away. Thinking of this, he instantly disappeared. His target was the Jinsheng sect. The sect leader of the Jinsheng sect had died, and the elders had lost their Xian Qi one after another. Now, the sect was facing the problem of life and death. It was unknown where second-rate sect had come from, but they had led countless people to stand outside the Jinsheng sect's mountain gate. Fortunately, the array formation protecting the mountain gate was still in place. However, the disciples who had gone out to purchase items were all captured by them. Although the disciples within the array formation were anxious, there was nothing they could do. Their eyes were locked on the disciples of the Jinsheng sect. The leader was a middle-aged man with disheveled hair. "I'm Taoist Fenggu. Today, I heard that the Gold City sent out a problem. I am willing to lead the mysterious Wind sect to take over the Gold City sect so that your holy light can continue to shine on this land." Nonsense. It was unknown who took the lead to walk out and spat in his direction. However, when the saliva landed outside the array formation, it only made a ding sound and was blocked. He did not care and only laughed out loud. So what if you guys are hiding inside? If you have the ability, release the array formation. Your female disciples will also become the Tao companions of our mysterious wind sex male disciples. After saying this, the remaining disciples of the mysterious gate of wind all burst out laughing. An inner sect disciple gritted his teeth. Now, in the entire sect, he was the only one who was above the 4th level of the spirit profound realm. He took a step forward and covered his body with his profound chi aura. Let go of my junior brother. 4th level of the spirit profound realm? Little rookie. Taoist Feng Gu glanced at him with disdain and waved his hand. The person beside him took a step forward and a long braid appeared in his hand in an instant. Pah! A huge rock instantly shattered. He lightly said, "Brat, don't be arrogant. Go for him." After shouting these words, the people around him all flew forward. The treasure weapons in their hands were all drawn out and directly landed on the head of the other party. That person saw that the situation was not good and immediately dodged to the side. When the long sword fell, he waved the whip in his hand to receive it. At this moment, the whip suddenly struck the long sword. With a pa sound, the long sword actually shattered. He looked at his shattered long sword in horror. This was a 5th grade artifact, and it was passed down from generation to generation. How is this possible? The Golden City sect disciples beside him were even more anxious as they shouted, "Senior brother, are you okay? Senior brother, be careful." Taoist Feng Gu's disciple grinned and suddenly kicked him. Seeing that he fell to the ground, 4 or 5 artifacts were immediately placed on his throat. Taoist Feng Gu said with great elegance, "I'll give you guys 1 minute to remove the array. Otherwise, I'll kill him." When they heard this sentence, everyone lowered their heads. The elders of the Golden City sect walked out with their crutches. He sighed and did not know what to say. He just closed his eyes and took out a token. He sighed and said, "My Golden City sect can't have no one. Open it." After saying this, he walked toward the cliff of reflection in despair. Everyone immediately laughed out loud. At this moment, a young voice sounded. "Get out of the way. Who is it? How dare you?" They all turned their heads and saw Ji Yu leading the horse and slowly walking toward them. He said faintly, "Get lost. Brat, you're courting death." One of them cursed loudly. With a long sword in his hand, he directly charged in Ji Yu's direction. Ji did not dodge. She just bent her body and instantly disappeared on the spot. In the next moment, she took out the giant sword of the warhounds and directly slashed at the 2 people. The 2 disciples were at least at the 4th level of the spirit profound realm and above, but they were killed by Ji Yu in 1 strike. They were shocked. This brat doesn't have any profound chi fluctuations. How can he be so powerful? Ji Yu's strength was not limited to this. It was time for the giant beast that he used to refine the puppet to see the light. He waved his hand, and a giant beast suddenly appeared on the ground. It slapped its chest. He let out a furious roar. Roar! Chapter 661. The giant beast looked at the people in front of it. When Ji Yu was forging it, she did not seal its intelligence. Under the influence of Ji Yu's intelligence, the giant beast actually had a certain level of intelligence. This was an extremely rare existence among the puppets. It's just a broken puppet. A cold look appeared in his eyes. His figure flashed and disappeared from his original spot. After a while, when he reappeared, he was holding 2 huge axes. He directly chopped down in the direction of Ji Yu. When the giant beast saw its master being chopped down, how could it still sit down? It only let out a roar, patted its chest, and turned around. It directly waved its hand and grabbed the axes in front of it. It roared and came over. It directly swung its hand and threw the axes out. The axes arrived in front of the 2 people. They raised their hands and blocked the axes. However, a trace of fear appeared in the hearts of the cultivators of Taoist Feng Gu. In the blink of an eye, Ji Yu disappeared from her original spot and stood on the giant beast's shoulder. Kill those who block the way. After receiving Ji Yu's order, The giant beast controlled its body and stepped forward step by step. As it roared, it uprooted all the surrounding trees. It directly waved the trees, sending the surrounding disciples of the mysterious sect of wind flying. Unknowingly, Gu had already arrived in front of the great protective mountain array. Gu said indifferently, "You're so useless. Come back here." After hearing this, the disciple of the Jincheng sect beside him suddenly stood up. The sect leader of the mysterious sect of wind was instantly furious. When had he ever endured such bullying? He walked in front of Jiyu, pointed at Jiyu's nose, and shouted loudly, "Brat, you're simply going too far." After shouting this sentence, he instantly disappeared from his original spot. The formation slowly descended at this moment. The eyes of the people of the Jincheng sect suddenly lit up. They looked at each other and saw Jiyu take a step forward. In the blink of an eye, a white light lit up around them. Jiyu disappeared on the spot. At this moment, Daoist Feng Gu stepped forward and said faintly, "Brat, you actually dare to provoke our Feng Gu lineage? Go, I want him dead." When all the disciples heard this, they immediately surrounded Jiyu. When Jiyu saw this scene, she turned around. It seemed that she had no choice but to kill today. Under Jiyu's command, the people around her took a step forward and rushed towards the giant beast. In an instant, countless beams of mystic light collided with the giant beast. The giant beast was just a puppet and did not feel anything. It grabbed the other people one by one and exerted force in its hand, causing them to spit out blood. Everyone fell into a pool of blood. Jiyu said faintly, "Capture the leader first." After shouting this sentence, the giant beast took 2 steps forward and directly lifted one of them up with one hand. It then heavily threw one of them to the ground, followed by a punch. Everyone spat out a mouthful of blood. Daoist Feng Gu was simply about to explode. In his hands, a hurricane was produced. In an instant, the hurricane arrived in front of Jiyu. Jiyu raised her hand and waved her sword again. Ding! The host used Windblade. Obtained 1 by 999 experience points. At this moment, the two forces of wind collided together. In the fierce wind, countless scorching blades directly slashed on his body, causing blood to drip. Daoist Gu Feng had never expected that his move would be so easily countered by someone else. His blood continued to flow like a fountain. This was simply an inconceivable thing. He had never experienced such a thing. He suddenly opened his eyes and disappeared in an instant. In an instant, he pulled out the magical weapon in his hand and swung it down heavily, accompanied by a loud rumbling sound. All the surrounding people were all sent flying. They all landed on the ground. Ji raised his hand and disappeared from where he was. In the next moment, he swung out his bejeweled weapon and chopped down on his opponent's head. All he could smell was the scent of fresh blood falling down. Daoist Feng Gu never expected that today he would be beheaded by a boy who was not even 18 years old. However, all of this had nothing to do with him. He fell to the ground in an instant. This was the second time that Ji saved their lives. Countless hearts of joy burst out in an instant. Countless disciples of the Jincheng sect surrounded Ji and kept chanting, "Forever, Xianfeng will always be here." When these words were shouted, Jiyu became the official leader of the Jincheng sect. Their eyes were fixed on Jiyu. Jiyu said lightly, "Okay." That night, bonfires spread throughout the Jincheng sect. Jiyu stood on the immortal wind platform and said lightly, "From today onwards, this place will be renamed the Evolving Temple." All the disciples of the Jincheng sect looked at each other. However, the Jincheng sect had been passed down for hundreds of years. They should be satisfied now. Jiyu's strength alone could destroy the sect. How could they continue to be in a deadlock? They all knelt down and were willing to submit. Jiyu brought the dean of the academy in from Tianjing City. After he walked in, his eyes were fixed on Jiyu. He said lightly, "You did well." The split soul ran away. The goddess is anxious. After hearing Jiyu's words, he looked up and suddenly became anxious. "You mean the goddess is still alive in this world?" After hearing Jiyu's words, a trace of surprise appeared in his eyes. Jiyu smiled. At the same time, she waved her hands. In an instant, an illusory figure appeared. The current Queen of Ice and Frost was no longer pretending to be a man like Ji-yu. Her beautiful figure was exceptionally eye-catching in this temple. However, the goddess's figure only flashed by. The old man was overjoyed. He knelt on the ground and said, "Greetings to the goddess, great elder." He knew in his heart that Ji-yu had now become the great elder of the evolving temple. Only the great elder could have the rope of spirit. Chapter 662. Ji-yu asked him to stretch out his hand. "Elder Changshi, I'm here to see how your injury is." Changshi chuckled. "Little friend, you don't know. This old man was injured by a hidden weapon in the past. I'm afraid that there's no medicine now." When Ji-yu said that he wanted to see if there was any possibility of recovery, the old man only smiled slightly. He really didn't dare to believe that he could still be so powerful. He raised his hand and saw that the surrounding profound energy was slowly closing in on Ji-yu. Along with the support of his spiritual power, it directly entered the old man's body. Now, in the battle 100 years ago, because Elder Changshi had just awakened, his strength was not strong. In addition, Shang Xian sect had gathered many sect from the union of 10,000 immortals, so it was normal for him to be defeated. Ji-yu followed his meridians and gradually radiated out. Under the support of Ji-yu's spiritual power, those meridians slowly gathered together, and there seemed to be faint signs of recovery. Ji-yu heavily slapped his back, and at this time, he spat out a mouthful of blood. His eyes widened, and he sat cross-legged on the ground, seeing that the Xian energy in his body was gradually forming. But now he wanted to let Elder Chang solidify his Xian energy. He also wanted to help him reconstruct his Dantian, so he needed a strong Dantian as his new Dantian. Ji-yu had already prepared for this. He waved his hand, and in an instant, a corpse appeared. After seeing the corpse, Ji-yu directly stretched out his hand and inserted it into the corpse. He suddenly reached out and immediately pulled the Dantian out from the corpse. Originally, Ji-yu wanted to use Taoist Gu Feng as a puppet, but now his Dantian could be used first. He waved his hand heavily, and the Dantian was inserted into Elder Changshi's body. Elder Feldstone suddenly opened his eyes wide. He felt a burst of refreshment in his heart. This was simply too delightful. His strength was constantly breaking through. In the blink of an eye, Ji-yu waved her hands and channeled a burst of profound energy into him. Elder Feldstone's new Dantian had fused well with his body, and very soon it formed a new strength. He let out a long breath. "This is simply too inconceivable. I never thought that there would be a possibility of rebirth after the Dantian was destroyed." Ji-yu smiled faintly. "In this world, nothing is impossible." Yes, yes, yes. He laughed out loud. He never thought that Ji-yu would be able to reshape the situation with just a light touch. Ji-yu said faintly, "From today onwards, we welcome Elder Longshire's return." After hearing Ji-yu's words, Longstone sighed. "It's a pity that my good brothers are still sleeping underground." Ji-yu said calmly, "There's no other way. They can only continue to sleep to see the return of the Queen of Frost." "Ha, that's right. From today onwards, this is the new ice shrine. However, these disciples are truly too weak." Ji shook her head and took a step forward. Closing her eyes, she seemed to hear a voice calling out to her. In the blink of an eye, rows of ancient books appeared in front of her. Elder Longshire touched those books lovingly. With these books, there was no need to worry about not being strong. The Queen of Frost kept urging Ji to find the divided soul, but Ji was not in a hurry. He just wanted all the disciples to walk into the middle of the square. He wanted to personally examine them and see if there were any talents among them. Ji glanced at the disciple at the end of the crowd. "That disciple, you come out." "What?" "That trash can get the temple master's attention." "He's just a trash." Presumably, the temple master wants to expel him. That's right. Everyone started talking at once. Jiyu infused her mental strength into his body. Fairy Rulin had completely settled down in the evolution shrine. Her motto was that since her master was here, she had to be here too. Jiyu did not know whether to laugh or cry, but she had no choice but to accept him. He said faintly, "All right, my good child, you can stay here." She was overjoyed when she heard this. Jiyu saw that this child was also an outstanding one. Although his body was still lacking, his eyes were telling Jiyu that he had the incomparable wisdom to evolve. "Are you willing to be my disciple?" Suddenly, everyone was in an uproar. The young man looked at Jiyu in shock. He never thought that fate would fall on him. He asked cautiously, "Master, ha ha ha, from today onwards, you'll be called Jiangqing and you'll be my disciple." What? Everyone was indignant. How could this fool become their direct disciple? Jiyu merely tapped on his body, and the meridian that had been hindering his development suddenly broke. The profound energy that had been suppressing him instantly filled his body. Body tempering realm, defensive profound realm, spirit profound realm. Finally, it stopped at the 8th level of the spirit profound realm. They never expected that a disciple who was just a piece of trash would be able to unleash his full strength at the 8th level of the spirit profound realm just because of a single meridian. They all knelt on the ground and kowtowed to Jiyu, saying, "Greetings, Master. This disciple will follow Master for the rest of his life." It was more like a gala, but Jiyu did not mind at all. He helped him up and said faintly, "As my disciple, you must first be someone who doesn't let yourself down. Then, do as much good as you can." After he finished speaking, he taught him the wind blade of the wind inheritance. It could be said that Jiangqing's talent was extraordinary. In just 6 hours, he ran over and told Jiyu that he had already grasped the basics of this profound skill. This made Fairy Rulin very unhappy. She grabbed Jiyu's hand and insisted that he teach her a more powerful, profound skill. Jiyu then passed a profound skill book to her. After learning for a few hours, there was still no progress. However, just as Jiyu was enjoying this beautiful moment, the dragon exterminating gang handed him a few monthly reports. Jiyu immediately frowned. It seemed that the war in the southern region was not going well. Even with the combined forces of 3 regions, they were still unable to take down the eastern region. Jiyu's western region had already suffered many casualties. The northern region's main forces had already taken over the western region's forces and were waiting for the final battle. Chapter 663. She turned to the last page of the Jiang Hu monthly report. It was recorded that several major sects in the western region were destroyed by a mysterious woman at the same time. There was even a new gang called the Free Profound Sect. Jiyu smiled faintly. This girl was clearly telling him that she would definitely go after Jiyu in the future. Jiyu didn't care too much and put it down again. At the end of the report, there was only a large figure in it. The Union of 10,000 Immortals was investigating the Golden City sect. It seemed that in the end, their eyes were locked on Jiyu's evolving temple. They were very curious about what kind of treasure the Ice Queen had left in the evolving temple. If they wanted to take it away, as long as they had the treasure in the evolving temple, then they would be able to step into a new realm. What a beautiful thought. Jiyu thought at this moment. Just as she walked out of the door of the main hall, 2 people ran in and knelt on the ground. They cupped their hands and said, "Hall Master, there is an envoy outside the mountain gate." Jiyu walked out and looked at the people kneeling on the ground. She asked, "You call yourself an envoy? Where are you from?" When they heard Jiyu's words, they immediately laughed out loud. They raised their heads and said faintly, "I'm Chunyin, the 7th elder of the profoundly profound sect, a secondary sect of the Union of 10,000 Immortals." That's a pretty long name, but it's pretty much your own name. After hearing this, he clenched his fists. "Boy, you have big guts. I heard that you changed your sect without permission. I think you mainly want to annex it. The Union of 10,000 Immortals doesn't have the habit of annexing other sections. Do you know what kind of crime you have committed?" He said to Jiyu angrily, kneeled down obediently, and let this old man take back your sect. It seemed that he was extremely confident in his strength. Jiyu smiled disdainfully. You have to have that ability first. After seeing Jiyu smile, he took a step forward in disdain, as if he saw Jiyu as a scourge. He said indifferently, Brat, you're just a piece of trash. How dare you block this old man's path? You're courting death. After shouting this, they stepped forward and looked in the direction of Jiyu. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared from where he was. The next moment, he suddenly stabbed in the direction of Jiyu. Jiyu disappeared in the blink of an eye. By the time it appeared, it was already behind him. He slapped down heavily with his palm. With a loud bang, the palm slapped on the back of the young man. A mouthful of blood spurted out from the young man's mouth. Never had he expected that Jiyu's strength would actually be formidable to such an extent. He suddenly turned around and locked his eyes on Jiyu. 10,000 miles flying insects. He suddenly released his mystical skill. Wherever the insects passed, whether it was flowers or trees, everything disappeared. Jiyu snorted coldly. Ding! The host used Raging Inferno. The reward is 1 times 999 experience points. The Raging Inferno instantly burned the insects. He frowned as he was burned by the insects. He never expected that Jiyu's Raging Inferno would be so strong. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared from where he was and pulled out his sword. This old man underestimated you just now, but you won't be so lucky next time. He snorted coldly as if he wanted to take away Jiyu's life. Jiyu pulled out her precious weapon and clashed heavily with his sword. He did not use any mystical energy. When the 2 swords clashed, a loud sound was heard. The 2 giant swords clashed together and made a loud sound. It was as if the 2 treasures were showing off their grades to each other. He suddenly pulled back his precious weapon and said indifferently, Go back and tell the union of 10,000 immortals that from today onwards, the profound sect of Gold City will become the Shrine of Ice. If they're not satisfied, they can come at any time. His words infuriated him to the point where he couldn't vent his anger. He immediately got up and left. Chen Yin did not have any confidence that he could fight with Jiyu now. Jiyu walked to the field alone. Looking at the poor soil, he suddenly understood that there was one more thing that could determine whether one was good or evil. He walked to the soil and took out countless seeds from his robes. He scattered them on the ground. The seeds that were scattered on the ground instantly sank into the soil. After waiting for a month, everyone would definitely be surprised. As soon as Chen Yin of the Union of 10,000 Immortals returned to his own sect, he started to cry and complain. The Union of 10,000 Immortals flew into a rage. For so many years, no sect dared to go against them. Where did this nameless kid come from? He actually dared to go against them. Perhaps they had not been in the world for so long that their eyes and ears were blocked. They were unwilling in their hearts. However, when they heard that the Wind sect had been completely wiped out, they were unwilling to provoke Jiyu. They could only announce to the public that Jiyu had taken over their sect. It was evil. The dragon-slaying gang in the mortal world had been attacked by countless people. Jiyu smacked the boulder heavily. This bunch of gutless bandits actually had the guts to do such a thing. He directly summoned the 18 golden puppets and attached a trace of his soul to one of the puppets. Instantly, the puppet took on the appearance of Jiyu. Jiyu returned to the cave by himself. He wanted to properly absorb the Xian energy of the 5 great profound sects. He wanted to turn it into his own treasure. His doppelganger, which was the current Jiyu in the mortal world, came to the dragon-slaying gang. When they heard that their gang leader had become the leader of the profound sect of Gold City, they were incomparably excited. A burly man said, "That's great. We can finally vent our anger." However, the puppet said, "I'm just a doppelganger of Master. My strength is not strong. So this time, we have to use our wits." Wits? Everyone's heart thumped. Ever since the Union of 10,000 Immortals listed them as an evil sect, they had become a rat crossing the street. Jiyu's doppelganger was not in a hurry. Didn't they create a Saintess a few days ago? They all said that the Saintess is a flower of a Xian beast. She's not a good thing. Everyone agreed one after another. GU's doppelganger sneered. We have the foundation of the people. They don't know that in front of the vast number of people, Xian cultivators are nothing but illusions. Then what should we do? GU's doppelganger moved his storage ring. In an instant, countless bottles of Xian roots appeared. GU's doppelganger said faintly, Go, distribute these to the people. However, we have to collect a certain amount of Xian stones and gold coins. Chapter 664. Everyone thought that these things must be good treasures, but they could also make them a windfall. Thinking of this, they all looked at each other. The next day, on the streets of Tianjing City, Gumball's father walked out of the mortal gates of various sects with his child crying. He sighed. You don't have the ability to be accepted by the profound sect, so you can only become a mortal in the future. There's nothing you can do about that, so you should work hard in the future. After saying this, he took a step forward and shook his head, disheartened. At this moment, a guy with a ghost face walked out. He asked, wretchedly, Guest, do you want to become a Xian cultivator? Who doesn't want to become a Xian cultivator? However, Gumball's father was a shrewd person. This person looked so ugly and was asking at the end of the street. Could he be a swindler? He raised his head and asked indifferently, Who are you? That person said indifferently, I'm the person who came to give you an opportunity. After hearing this, Gumball and his father looked at each other. Don't play with us. Since ancient times, only those who obtained Xian roots had the hope of entering that beautiful world. We father and son know what our status is, so don't come and harass us. They looked at each other and seemed to agree with this view. That wretched-looking man said, Do you dare to come with me? After seeing it, you'll understand. They watched him walk away casually. However, becoming a Xian cultivator meant that they could become a legendary immortal. Even the emperor would be moved, let alone them, mere mortals. Thinking of this, the father and son looked at each other. If you dare to deceive us, father and son, we'll break your legs. After saying this, they coldly snorted and directly stepped into the small room in front of them. They looked at each other and saw that the people here were displaying all kinds of high-level Xian skills. They were flying around, obviously a group of experts. There were also a few youths who came with them. One of the youths couldn't bear this enviable scene and stepped forward. I wonder if I have the ability to do so. An old man wearing a long robe walked out. He had a benevolent look on his face. What a good child. After patting the young man's head, the old man took out a ginseng-like thing, and the young man put a large bag of gold coins on top of the basin. Then, he carefully took the spirit root and impatiently ate it. After that, he drank a bottle of holy water. In an instant, his temperament underwent a huge change. He walked in front of a huge rock and slammed his fist down. The huge rock instantly shattered. He looked at his hands in surprise. Go Meatball and his father looked at each other. Could it be that this brat was a Celestial Foundation elite? He was a genius. However, judging from his snot, he didn't look like a smart person. Now you should believe me, right? He didn't dare to say anything more. He just obediently took out a big bag from his arms and put it on the basin. He tossed the bag of gold coins in his hand. A smile of joy appeared on their faces. Go Meatball and his father suddenly became a standard Xian cultivator. They were very happy. However, they also saw that there were people who couldn't step into this sect because they didn't have money. That housekeeper only asked them to offer their blood. It turned out that those shitty sects had always monopolized the so-called opportunity. Everyone could become a Xian cultivator. In this world, there was no such thing as insufficient talent. They looked at each other and immediately burst out laughing. Jiu's clone stood on top of a tall building and looked at the scene in front of her. We only need to wait for a month. Everything in this world will be different. Listen to my orders. Distribute these medicines to the nearby towns. Jiu's clone had miscalculated. Regarding the common people's desire for Xian cultivators, in just half a month, Jiu's clone had sold out all the medicines. It was time for someone to fall into the trap. Right now, no one was interested in entering the ancient profound sect. They were very curious about what had happened. They sent people to find out. It wasn't good if they didn't ask, but when they did, they were shocked. They only saw a few people kneeling on the ground and reporting this news to carefree sex Lin Yin. Lin Yin was a representative figure in the mortal world. In order to obtain the title of Xian Cultivator, he had paid more than anyone else. But now, he was actually told that anyone could become a Xian Cultivator. Wasn't this a huge joke? If this news were to spread, all of them Xian Cultivators wouldn't be able to show their faces anymore. When he thought of this, an indescribable rage filled his mind. This is simply preposterous. This is utter nonsense. He was incomparably angry. With a slight wave of his hand, countless disciples kneeled on the ground. Jiyu's clone sensed that someone was coming over. She stood up and said to the people of the dragon-slaying gang, "Bring those corpses up." Man-made Xian roots had a huge flaw. Not only could it allow people to enter the Xian cultivator realm, there were also people who naturally rejected these kinds of Xian roots. However, no one would denounce this matter. Among the tens of millions of people, there were only a little more than 100 dead people. This was already extremely lucky. After Jiyu's clone finished speaking, those puppet masters controlled the corpses to stand in place. The black-clothed people descended one after another. They represented the disciples of the carefree sect. They were here to represent justice and completely annihilate this sect. Today, unexpectedly, it was faster than expected. More than 100 Devil Sect disciples couldn't even withstand a single blow. They were defeated at the first touch. They raised their swords and chopped down on the crowd. Looking at the ground full of corpses, they left complacently. However, they would never have thought that a single piece of profound stone would record everything they had done. Jiyu's clone discovered that the profound stone only needed to be slightly modified to record everything in the surroundings. It could show the original scene and could also be wirelessly replicated. After the people from the free profound sect left, they threw the stones with the portraits into the houses of every family. Now, Jiyu's clone's man-made Xian roots were in short supply. Everyone was waiting for the Xian roots to be distributed. But now, the people who distributed the Xian roots were all dead. Chapter 665. All the mortals, as well as the Xian cultivators who wanted to upgrade their spirit roots, received this news. They held their precious weapons in their hands and glared at those so-called Xian cultivators. They ran to the front of those people's houses in an aggressive manner and shouted loudly, "Get the hell out here. What right do you have to kill people? That's right. You've gone too far. Hand over the murderers. Hand over the murderers." Every one of them shouted aggressively. Their eyes were filled with ferocity, as if they wanted to devour the people in front of them. The soldiers standing on the city walls looked down one after another. Their hearts trembled slightly. They looked at each other. One of them stepped forward and said indifferently, "Who's so bold to be so disrespectful?" He shouted indifferently, "Kill." The surrounding people took a step forward and ran out of the mansion. Every one of them had an ominous glint in their eyes. They were like bloodthirsty beasts, directly pouncing in the direction of the commoners. For a moment, screams sounded incessantly. After hearing these screams, Jiyu didn't make a move. The Xian cultivators who were watching also didn't make a move. However, those who obtained man-made Xian roots couldn't sit still. They wanted to seek justice for those who died. None of them knew how to use Xian skills because they were extremely powerful. After seeing Jiyu's clone, they couldn't help but stand behind Jiyu, as if they were looking at dead people. They looked at the crowd in front of them and raised their hands. As their hands heavily swung down, countless bows and arrows flew in an instant. These bows and arrows were all imbued with Xian Qi. Although they didn't have Xian Qi, these Xian cultivators of the mortal world weren't very strong. Under these bows and arrows imbued with Xian Qi, it was already considered good to be able to block a few arrows. After these long swords pierced through their chests, they fell into a pool of blood. They fell into a pool of blood one after another. Another group of people walked out and cried out the names of the dead. Then they said, We were sent by the Saintess to teach the world the way to eternal life. We will never die. Even if one of us dies, there will be thousands of us. Do you agree?" After hearing his words, everyone looked at each other and agreed with him too much. After saying this, the man took out the holy water. Holy water is here. Everyone is in awe. Everyone knelt down on the ground in an instant. After knowing that it was the Saintess who did such a benevolent thing, everyone spurned those who had slandered the Saintess. Apart from the representatives of the major profound sects in the mortal world, they all killed themselves. One after another, they pulled out their knives and committed suicide out of shame. They had no choice but to commit suicide. Just the spittle alone could completely swallow them up. After feeling this point, Lin Fan was stunned. They all retreated. They all knelt in the pool of blood. Ji Yu's clones said faintly, "From today onwards, the Ice Frost sect will spread in the Heavenly Realm City." The truth was just as Ji Yu's clone had predicted. Now, if anyone dared to say anything bad about the Saintess, there would be people who wanted to kill them. Not to mention slandering the holy sect, they would be beaten up by everyone. Seeing that her task was completed, Ji Yu's clone got up and returned to the former Jincheng sect, which was now the Ice Sealing Shrine. Ji Yu, who was in the cave, had also completely digested all the Xian Qi absorbed from the Jincheng sect's leader. Now, the 5 great powers of inheritance had all been upgraded to the 3rd layer of the human profound realm. When she opened the stone door, she saw her clone standing outside. Ji Yu just patted his forehead, and that trace of spiritual power suddenly returned to her body. He just moved his mind, and everything entered Ji Yu's mind. Ji Yu laughed happily like a child. She didn't expect that her clone would use such a method to solve the problem. She was very smart. At this moment, news came from the dragon-slaying gang. The ancient profound sects that had been wiped out by Ji Yu's clone all refused to accept it. When Shen Yin returned to the sect, the first thing he did was to inform the carefree sect about this matter. They didn't know that Ji Yu was the real master of the dragon-slaying gang, so they aggressively led people down the mountain gate and wiped out the 2 strongholds of the dragon-slaying gang. It was said that in the strongholds, no matter whether they were male or female, old or young, and even a rat, they were all killed by them. This was not killing rats, but slapping the face of the dragon-slaying gang. However, after a fierce battle, they were no match for the dragon-slaying gang. So Tang Mingyuan brought people to the Gold City sect to ask for Ji Yu's help. Ji Yu nodded and stood up. She had completely handed over the dragon-slaying gang to her brother. Her brother's matter was her own matter. She pulled Tang Mingyuan and flew in the direction of the dragon-slaying gang. By the time she arrived, the dragon-slaying gang was already heavily surrounded. A burly man stood in front of the gate. However, he knew that he was no match for these ancient profound sects, so he held a small magical weapon. He shouted loudly, "Brothers, the gang leader has already gone to find the old gang leader. We have to defend this place and our dragon-slaying gang. If we have to die, let's die first. Live and die together. Live and die together." Everyone waved the magical weapons in their hands and shouted continuously. Chun Yin of the Free Profound Sect looked at the people in front of him with disdain. He felt that these people were here to die. However, if others wanted to die, why should he stop them? Thinking of this, he smiled happily. He waved his hand and said, "Brothers, these people don't want to live anymore. We don't need to leave them alive. Kill them. After we kill them, I will be responsible for all the consequences." After shouting these words, the people behind him ran out one after another. Under their bodies, they took out long Xian arrows. After shouting loudly, countless Xian arrows flew out. The burly man couldn't hold it in anymore. What would he think when he saw his brothers die by his side? He took out his magical weapon and shouted, "F***CK, your grandmother." After shouting these words, he wielded his precious weapon and directly charged forward. The person opposite him coldly snorted, as if he was looking at a group of ants recklessly attacking him. He smiled faintly, as if he could crush these ignorant ants to death in an instant. Chapter 666. He took a step forward. With a heavy wave of his artifact, two of the free and unfettered sect's disciples pulled out their artifacts. The three life treasures collided with each other. The life treasures in the hands of the two carefree disciples broke apart at this moment. They were blown away and raised their heads to look at the scene in front of them. He said indifferently, "If you want my brother's life, then come at me." The disciples of the dragon-slaying gang behind him were not willing to be outdone. They also took out Xian-Chi crossbows from their arms and shot out Xian-Chi arrows one after another. Bang, bang, bang. Three loud sounds rang out. Bang. The arrows collided with their artifacts. Although their prized artifacts were fine, small white dots had appeared one after another. When they saw these white dots, they were instantly enraged. These people were just insignificant, profound practitioners. What right did they have to go against the high and mighty ancient, profound practitioners? When they thought of this, their killing intent grew stronger and stronger. They waved their hands, and suddenly, countless arrows flew out. They also began to riot at the same time. They charged towards the dragon-slaying sect's disciples. When they saw that blood was about to flow like a river, a shout suddenly came from behind. "You dare to move." It was Ji Yu's voice. Ji Yu appeared in front of everyone from behind. His eyes were fierce, as if he would kill everyone if anything went wrong. When they saw Ji Yu's terrifying eyes, they all retreated. As an outer sect elder of the free and unfettered sect, how could Chun Yin allow others to act like a tyrant? In the blink of an eye, he disappeared from where he stood. Go to hell. His precious weapon was like a thunderclap. The power of thunder and lightning filled the tiny, grade 6 precious weapon as a loud rumbling sound echoed out. Ji Yu only turned around. After entering the third level of the mortal profound realm, he no longer needed to use the Warhound's greatsword to use the profound skill in his hand. The artifact in his hand was filled with the power of lightning. Profound skill, thunderous iron fist. This was the profound skill of the Gold City sect. Ji Yu learned it after a glance. Of course, this was all thanks to the system. Ding! Host used Thunder Iron Fist. Obtained 1 by 999 experience points. The power of thunder and lightning suddenly erupted at this moment. With a boom, his iron fist collided heavily with Chun Yin's fist. With a loud rumble, Ji Yu disappeared on the spot. He said indifferently, "Kill." After shouting kill, the surrounding crowd rushed in and surrounded Ji Yu. Ji Yu instantly disappeared from his spot. Holding his sword, he watched as Chun Yin stood in the middle of the crowd. He was probably trying to use others to protect himself. The corners of Ji Yu's mouth curled into a smile. He landed on the ground and raised his hand. The moment he turned around, he instantly chopped off the heads of several people in front of him. Chun Yin looked at Ji Yu with a twisted expression. What kind of monster was this? He suddenly thought of something and disappeared from his spot. He wanted to retaliate, but he did not expect that Ji Yu had already disappeared in front of him. Ji Yu's iron fist descended, carrying with it a strong surge of profound energy. The sound of thunder almost breaking rang out beside his ear. With a loud bang, he disappeared from his spot. Chun Yin scoffed. "You're underestimating me. I'm also a profound practitioner who can control the power of thunder and lightning." At this moment, he suddenly swung his fist. Accompanied by the sound of thunder, the two bolts of lightning collided. Chun Yin's hand burned in an instant. He took a step back, and his arm disappeared without a trace in an instant. Ji Yu instantly disappeared from his spot. Chun Yin could only let out a scream. He never expected that he, a dignified expert at the spirit profound realm, would have his arm chopped off and could only stay on the spot. His gaze was deep as he looked at Ji Yu. He gritted his teeth. He looked in Ji Yu's direction and said, "You're very strong, but you shouldn't have gone against us." After saying this, they held onto their weapons and ran towards Ji Yu. Their gazes were fixed on Ji Yu. Ji Yu's figure instantly disappeared from his spot. Countless bolts of lightning struck the ground at this moment. Boom, boom, boom. The power of thunder and lightning exploded on the ground at this moment, and a wave of scorched black soil could be seen on the ground. Ji smiled faintly. He raised his head and looked in front of him. He furrowed his brows and looked in front of him. The Free Profound sect had never expected that their first elder of the outer sect would be struck down by the power of thunder and lightning summoned by Ji mystical skill. A charred smell slowly wafted out at this moment. Ji asked indifferently, "Do you still want to come up?" After hearing Ji's words, the two of them looked at each other. They raised their hands and pointed in Ji's direction. "All right, kid, you wait for me obediently." He turned his head and took 2 steps back. But at this moment, he landed on the ground and raised his hand. Ji said indifferently, "Your trash sect better send some experts. Otherwise, it won't be enough for me to kill." Seeing Ji's arrogance, they looked at each other. Ji was too much. She actually dared to look down on them. But now, they couldn't do anything to Ji. They could only support each other and walk out. Ji sneered. For the Free Profound sect, she must kill 100. Everyone walked towards Ji's direction. Their eyes were as if they were looking at a god. Ji said indifferently, "Brothers, take your weapons. Let's go and get it back." They shouted excitedly, "Spit out what you owe me. Return what you ate from me." After Ji finished speaking, he led the dragon-slaying gang in the direction of the Free Unfettered Profound sect. The Free Unfettered Profound sect watched as the 2 useless disciples returned. The sect leader of the Profound sect, Yin, looked at the 2 and asked, "How high is that kid's Xianqi?" "We don't know. But Elder Yin died under the protection of so many people. Do they know what kind of profound sect we are?" "He knows, but he doesn't fear us at all. He even killed our people." After hearing this, they clenched their fists. He said indifferently, "You trash." Chapter 667. Yin was instantly enraged. He stood up, and the dark force in his hand suddenly exploded. He grabbed the people in front of him and lifted them up high. He exerted a little force in his hand and lifted the 2 useless disciples up. He exerted a little more force in his hand. That person screamed in agony. At this moment, blood slowly flowed down. Yin did not feel much when he saw the blood all over the ground. His body trembled slightly, and he disappeared from where he was. He stood in front of the profound door. He sensed that something was not right in front of him. However, he could not pinpoint what was wrong. He only saw a few cultivators standing in front of the mountain gate. He saw them raise their hands and point their swords in Ji's direction. He said calmly, "Kill them." Countless disciples behind him flew out and charged towards Ji. They raised their hands and charged towards Ji in an instant. They leaped up and slashed their swords heavily towards Ji's direction. The people around them drew their treasured weapons. A loud rumbling sound was heard as they raised their hands. Immediately after, the brothers of the dragon slaying gang sneered. Although their Xian strength wasn't strong, they were definitely loyal people. They drew their treasured weapons and charged towards that group of people. A battle broke out in an instant. They came directly in front of Ji and locked their gazes in front of Ji. He disappeared from where he was in the blink of an eye. He charged towards Ji. At this moment, the 2 of them widened their eyes. Those people stood up and looked at each other. There were 2 loud rumbles. The dragon-slaying gang brothers successfully killed one of them and came forward. They landed on the ground and instantly widened their eyes. It was a chaotic battle. It could only be described as a chaotic battle. Screams of pain could be heard everywhere. Ji opened her eyes. Her figure flashed and disappeared from where she was. Ding! The host used the wind blade. Experience points gained, won by 999. Countless gusts of wind were crashing against the grand protective array. He laughed out loud and shouted unscrupulously, "You are too ignorant. Do you think you could destroy my defensive formation with your strength?" Yin had originally thought that Ji was an expert. He had not expected that Ji would be so stupid. He thought to himself as he disappeared from where he stood in the blink of an eye. Ji didn't want to use such a light attack to destroy his protective aura. This was just a small trick. His spiritual power accompanied the wind and entered the array formation. At this moment, The wind was blowing violently. His spiritual power merged with the chi aura. It quickly destroyed the formation core of the formation. The array core was originally created by a powerful person. Originally, even with Jiu's strength, it would not be easy to destroy it. Unfortunately, Jiu was also an array master and was very clear about the weaknesses of the array. There was a loud rumbling sound. All of a sudden, the Qi gang collapsed one after another. He disappeared from where he stood, raised his hand, and swung it heavily. At this moment, the powerful Xian energy flew out slowly and hit the strong earth wall in front of him. After being hit, the array core turned into a cloud of dust and disappeared from where it was. Everyone was stunned on the spot. Too strong. This strength was really too strong. In just a short period of time, he was able to break the protective formation of an ancient, profound sect. This was simply inconceivable. They looked at each other. Speechless expressions appeared on their faces. Chen Yan's heart skipped a beat. He leaped to his feet and ran away. When he was halfway there, he suddenly turned his head around. Then he took out countless treasures from his bosom. These treasured weapons were mainly hidden weapons. One by one, the round marks appeared in front of Jiu. After the Xian energy in his hand flew out in an instant, there was a loud rumbling sound. The round marks exploded and the surrounding Xian energy fell. A white fog blocked in front of Jiu. Jiu waved his hand. Only then did he disperse the thick fog in front of him. He frowned. He did not expect that Chen Yin's Xian energy was not strong, but he had many thoughts. After sensing that Jiu was coming, they disappeared in front of Jiu. He ran madly to the front of the carefree immortal cave. Following a loud bang, a figure flew down. After activating the coiling rock dragon claw in front of him, a door gradually rose up. When Jiu arrived at the entrance of the cave, Jiu was stunned. The large door descended and landed on the ground with a loud rumbling sound. Jiu stood outside the cave door. He took out 18 puppets from his storage ring. Ding! Host used 18 puppets. Obtain experience points, won by 999. At this moment, they took a step forward. At this moment, a figure flashed and appeared in front of Jiu. He ran directly in front of Jiu. In the blink of an eye, Jiu disappeared from the spot. He turned around and looked at the crowd behind him. He saw blood flowing to the ground. He said indifferently, "There are actually so many Xian cultivators?" The few Xian cultivators beside him followed him. They looked at each other. They never expected that the sect master of the Xian sect would actually escape into the cave while the other party was attacking. This was a great humiliation. However, this was not important now. Jiu stood in front of the cave door. He reached out and placed his hand on the stone wall. A few people from the dragon-slaying gang retreated. "Sect master, save us." Jiu ordered the 18 golden puppets to stay here. He walked in front of the dragon-slaying gang. It turned out that the profound, carefree sect's reinforcements had arrived. "Little guy, we old men are still here. The carefree sect must not be destroyed." Jiu's mouth revealed a trace of a smile. He said indifferently, "With just you guys?" After hearing this sentence, they clenched their fists. Wasn't this brat a little too arrogant? A few people from the dragon-slaying gang said indifferently, "Old men, haven't you noticed that something is wrong?" The ancestors of the profound, carefree sect looked around and instantly understood. Jiu in front of them, a small person, actually had such terrifying strength. He actually broke the protective formation of the sect. Is this world crazy? They did not dare to believe it. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.